is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Iamaleava, end zone, diving attempt. It is caught for a touchdown. Chris Brazel puts Tennessee back on top.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Cranks it up, goes downfield, and gets it complete. Here goes Restrepo again, spinning his way, kept his balance inside the 5.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
There was no defensive pass interference.
Oh, my goodness.
The ball will be at the 9-yard line.
Kirby Smart did not believe it. So Bill Lamagna, a discussion. They have changed the call, which is an enormous moment in this game.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
How about that spin move? Bryson Daly, and the Daly double across the goal line.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And good afternoon, 365 Sports. David Smoak, surrounded by greatness. Paul Catalina to my left, Craig Smoak to my right. Emery Winter, who comes in here every day and learns about life with the way we talk before the show. And then Garrett Ross is back. And good to see you, Garrett. Jack McKenzie ran everything yesterday, and he's exhausted. And so he is taking, at least for now, a time away from this beautiful studio. Lots of news to get to. Want to welcome I want to welcome our newest sponsor of 365 Sports, Tradesman Services. Appreciate what they do. They operate an locally owned and operated company serving Texans for 30 years, offering maintenance plans at just $12, by the way, a month, free service call for all new customers, and also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service, CoolingWaco.com. Thank you to our newest sponsor of 365 Sports. And sometimes we take things for granted. We have a screen that's behind us, and Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, which is a monster mother company with what they do. And then there's also with on the left-hand side, which is on my left, on your right on the screen, with Paul and numerous different sponsors that come and go and stay with us along the way. So, college football news. Boy, this kid's had some trouble with the injuries, but he's a really good player, but he's done for the year. Grayson McCall out for the rest of the year. And, again, a story that I hate to see happening with former UCF quarterback at NC State.
Yeah, it's not the year. It's his career. I mean, He's done. He's done with injuries. He's officially done playing football, and a guy who you've seen a lot of and a lot of mentions of the last several years at this point. No, he's completely done with head injuries. This isn't a, hey, I got a concussion, I'm sitting out. He's toast. So that's a guy who a lot of people have been lamenting today because he provided so many great moments and victories and Sun Belt action, and obviously goes to NC State and was one of the bigger names in the portal, although didn't really get pursued like one of the bigger names. And now it maybe makes a little bit of sense why, that there weren't more teams after Grayson McCall, perhaps because of some of his track record. But, he's done completely and is going to be seeing some specialists to try and, I guess, best help him to handle the damage or whatever side effects there could be. You know, those are finicky injuries, head injuries. They can go a lot of different directions. So glad he's making the call for his own health and safety, although I'm sure it wasn't all his call, obviously, but you get to a point where your body and your people taking care of your body and your loved ones say, and your body screams at you like, hey, this is over, so he's completely done now.
And you wonder, you see what's happening with Tua in the NFL. He's coming back again in what he's dealt with. And what I meant, I should have said, yes, end of his career, but I don't know how many years he'd have left, because we don't know anymore about how many years players have. But he was at Coastal Carolina, and then, of course, NC State, 4 years at Coastal Carolina, and then this year with the Wolfpack.
Yeah, he was done anyways. This is his sixth year. He's 5 years at Coastal. He had this year at NC State, and he's got the concussion. So he's completely done. Yeah, this is the end of the road for him, and just unfortunate that a career ended that way. And especially a career that had so many bright moments. But I guess that's your saving grace, is that you had a lot of really cool moments while you were in action, while you were healthy, especially at Coastal. Obviously, didn't make it to the end of the road with NC State. But, no, he's a player that a lot of people are going to have great memories of, and just hope his health is for the best as he moves forward now.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching him play. I had kind of hoped he would break out of Coastal. I say break out of Coastal, that's not right, but get an opportunity at the power level last year, and that didn't happen for reasons, I guess. You were kind of knowing now. NC State gave him the shot. It looked like he was going to be kind of fun with that team early on, but he had a non-head injury early in the year. Their defense was abysmal, or is abysmal, and then he had what happened a couple weeks ago. So such a bummer, but I do think that there's a void that we'll have in college football this year, because I really did like watching him play. He seems like a cool guy and a lot. He's going to be a coach and transitioning that right now.
I hope it all works out for him. Louisville wide receiver Caullin Lacy is opting out for the rest of the regular season, or remainder of the season. Louisville confirming this. So, when Jason Smith, Notre Dame, what was the linebacker? Jalen Smith, hurt himself in the bowl game, and then, of course, had to go through the drop foot. The Cowboys drafted him. He ended up having a couple of pretty good years. But that started, and there may have been others, but that started, why would I want to play in a bowl game and possibly injure myself, which can happen anywhere. But at the same time, we started to see that. Now, of course, with the red shirt and now with the transfer portal, not sure. I read part of this story. I don't know if you guys did too, but that they are trying to negotiate of whether or not they can bring him back. And so here we are towards the 2/3 mark of the season, and he has a decision to make. He will opt out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, he may come back to Louisville. Louisville also, built a team through the transfer portal. Now they have 4 losses. Tyler Shucks actually kind of worked out for them. They have not been nearly as good on defense as they were a year ago there at Louisville. But, they had the whole thing with Penny Boone. They had a couple other guys that committed there and then decided to go other places. And then Caullin Lacy was a big get for them, replacing James Thrash, who went to the NFL this last year. He was a really good player for them last year. And he played well. He had a 100-yard kickoff return just last week against Miami. He was a big part of the Miami game, but had some injuries. Now that they're kind of out of the ACC race too, he's opting out. We'll see where he goes. He's a good player. He's a very good player, but maybe not NFL quite caliber, so he's got to have that other year, and we'll see what happens with him.
Yeah, let's call it what it is. He's going to jump in the portal to find a better team to play for.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yes, but they also are they're also talking to him about keeping him here. But if he can find better money and a better team, yes.
Yeah, I'm sure that they are. He's one of the better players.
Today.
Yeah, I'm sure they would like to keep him, but he's quitting on them 4 games into the year, less than 4 games into the year to preserve his red shirt. So, yeah, I hate that he had the injury early on, the collarbone, but based on all the reaction that I've seen today, Louisville fans are like, I hope he's still not cashing NIL checks the rest of the year. Yeah. I hope that he's, going ahead and packing his bags. There's a lot of people not really loving Caullin Lacy nor this decision made by him. And, hey, I'm sure injuries played a role and whatever else. I mean, not everybody's some NIL hound that's just chasing that dollar, and going to and fro to find it, and that's all that they're desiring. But this move in particular, based on the reaction, seems like that's a self-preservation. And, hey, you got to do what you got to do for yourself, but there's also an element of self-preservation in situations like this where, we're losing now. All right, I'm sitting out, and I'm going to pack my bags. That really doesn't make a lot of college football fans real happy with the state of the game in some cases. I don't know how you could prove individually, case by case, what guys' motivations are, but when your team suddenly starts sliding and next thing you know, there's an injury that seems to be a bit bigger of a deal than it should have been or appeared to be initially. And guys are, yeah, maybe I'll come back next year, but I'm going to go ahead and redshirt. I don't think that really bodes well for a return, and I think that's one of the issues that a lot of people have with some of the player empowerment nowadays.
Yeah, See, anytime you bring this, I don't like it. It's not my career. It's not the rules of which I'm under, but I don't like this. And yet, when you do that, you'll get a few, Paul and Craig, that will say, oh, come on, get off my lawn, right? Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I really, like, we're starting to have, you can play in the NFL and you can leave, but you don't get a check. You can play in the NFL, but you can't leave to go to another team till the season's over, and you may not be able to do that if you're under contract for more than another year. Is this really what's best for the players? Absolutely. You take advantage of it, but I'm not so sure. It just is another part of what I think is a little bit greasy, in my opinion.
Well, and yes, I mean, it's legal, so they can do it. So this is where revenue sharing, collective bargaining, contracts will come in to where there's got to be some sort of – I'm all about player empowerment because they had none. They had zero rights before, none. They, for the longest time, they wouldn't even pay for all their food, So that was a fight. So, when people wonder why it took so long to get them, actual money for their name, image, and likeness, and they were all in for the food for athletes for a long time. And that's crazy. So now they've gone from all of that to all this. There needs to be maybe like a 10% correction in this to where it can just make sense. And then it makes it honestly easier for everybody because there is a structure in place that benefits both sides and can punish both sides for certain things. Nothing works if one side gets everything they want, right? Then it's always going to.
You mean like the NCAA did for 100 years?
Yeah. Nothing eventually. Eventually it comes down. Ask Russia about how many times they've had to change governments. They've never quite figured this out over there. If you just take and take and take and take, eventually there's going to be a pushback. And eventually there's going to be enough people who agree with the people who are pushing back to take away from you. So nothing lasts forever, and that's why you need to build something that is sustainable. Because right now this is not sustainable.
Yeah, Craig, what are your thoughts about him being able to make this decision? Is it part of the rules he can?
I mean, it's a part of the rules. I don't think it's great for college football. I think this is what eliminates some of the non-blue blood fans ultimately because the TV ratings are higher than ever for certain matchups. Certain matchups, yes. Certain matchups, not all of them. I think the people who are fans of Louisville maybe aren't as excited about the future as fans of Michigan or even, for that matter, like Northwestern because they know that they're completely built into the infrastructure that's got all the power right now. But for fans of non-blue bloods that aren't getting the benefit of every doubt, and yeah, they still get pinged with the transfer or whatever, but that's child's play compared to the issues that a lot of other teams are dealing with. I think this is just another thing that wears on you as a college football fan that is not a fun part about the sport right now, and that even if you believe in player empowerment and you believe he should have some rights to make decisions, this very clearly appears to be a guy who's quitting on his team so he can go play maybe at their rival for more money next year.
Yeah.
And that sucks, and that's not fun, and that's not good for the sport. I'm sure somebody will say otherwise, and that's not anti-athlete or anti-compensation because that's always that straw man argument that dishonest people try to bring up when you try to push back on any kind of the player empowerment. Hey, make all the money you want to, but you being able to just I'm in a red shirt handful of games into the season. I'm going to give up on my team because it's not going the way that I want. You wouldn't pull that S in the NFL. But you can pull it in college, and you can, do basically whatever you want at this point. So I don't think it's a good element of the game. I also don't know what you do about it other than the one thing that nobody wants to do, seemingly, that could do it is to put guys under contract. So you can't bitch about it when you don't want to do anything about it, in my opinion. I mean, we as fans can because we don't have any control over it, but I don't want to hear a single word from a school official or anybody who's got any element of power about, the problems you were part of the issues that created all this, and you guys could very easily solve them, but the one thing you guys don't want to do is the one thing that would solve most of these issues, because then you'd be giving away too much of your power. So it's a power struggle that leads to a lot of side effects like this, where, guys are seemingly packing it up and looking for their next destination in the middle of a season.
Yeah, here's from retired stockbroker. If these players are getting NIL money, then they need to be ineligible for the transfer portal. There's no rule for that. There's no way you can keep them from transfer.
Well, name, image, and likeness. Let's make sure on the legality of this.
This is not a contract.
Name, image, and likeness you own no matter where you go, because that's your name, image, and likeness. So unless I've made a deal to give that to somebody, which you would be stupid to do outside of being able to control your name, image, and likeness for a long time, that's you. Now, if they were getting paid an actual salary from schools, but that's not how this works yet. Now, with the revenue sharing, that will probably come about. That's the thing that can help this along. But, both sides have to agree to some sort of bargaining, and especially in the short term, some sort of collective bargaining in absence of a college athletics players union, because that's going to take years to get approved. You can't just go to the court and be like, we'd like to fast track this. There's a lot of that in there. So that's a little bit different. So everybody, we all own our own name, image, and likeness.
Yep.
You can't, and then college athletes were the only ones in any walk of life who, for whatever reason, did not, whatever arbitrary reason they came up with 100 years ago that they wouldn't. Well, now, that has changed. So,
all right. There's a confusion with a couple of you, especially Clint Moses. I'd like to get clarification. How many opt-out players are on your current team? And again, we all have different current teams. And you can't transfer inside the season. Transferring after the year is over, part of college football. We either like it or you don't. You don't like it when somebody leaves, it's pretty good. Maybe that's because you're not good enough, or maybe they're getting a better offer and your NIL's not in pretty good shape, or your depth chart's good. And so it's not about transferring. It's about transferring in season, which, of course, they've so far been able to keep that from happening. Ashton Jeanty, Boise State, right now among the favorites to win the Heisman Trophy. Great game tomorrow night against UNLV on being in the college football playoff race. We may not be handing out all of the NIL checks, but we check the box for every single other thing. I like this kid, and it's not just because he's joined the show. He's a great player, but he does seem to have a pretty nice little even keel about who he is and about where college football might be, too.
I can't wait for him to be a Dallas Cowboy. No, I'm sorry. I fell asleep for a second and woke up from that wonderful dream. But, yeah.
He doesn't fit the offense.
Yeah.
That's what Jerry will say.
He's unbelievable. He's great. And you got to talk about you want to talk about a guy who has unbelievable loyalty, self-discipline, and all these other things to be as good as he was at Boise State, know what the economic limitations are there, although I know he's getting taken care of and he's probably fine. But to say that I want to be here because this is where I'm truly happy and that the money will come to me at some point in my life is something that a lot of kids that are 20 years old, and that's what he is, he's 20 years old, just don't have the maturity to do because, Georgia or Miami or whoever calls you up and says, hey, how'd you like to make $750,000? And you say, when's my flight? That's kind of how it happens. So there's nothing not to like about Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah, I want to wrap around to the Caullin Lacy thing, too, because one thing we didn't mention was his agent coming out with a statement, basically saying the things that you said about the injury timeline and his broken collarbone at the beginning of the year, and that he wants to return to Louisville, and that both sides are working hard to make that happen. So, look, I know that I feel like this is more of I'm going to save my stock and, weigh my options. But if he, in fact, to his credit, if he, in fact, is just getting healthy and coming back to Louisville, then I will commend him for that. But in this era, I think that you see anybody starting to take their red shirt at this point in the season, it's definitely a question of, unless they're like a freshman who that just was by design to begin with, that you're wondering okay, who's preserving themselves to get in the portal. So we'll see where he ultimately ends up. And hey, if about 3 months from now he's, re-upping with Louisville, then I'll commend him and, say a lot of great things about him. But I'm just weary of anybody and their decision making, especially when statements are coming from agents. Like that's part of the new era as well. But we'll see on that front. But as far as Jeanty goes, I think he's a great player. He's saying doing all the right things. He's just got to keep it up.
I had a note about A&M linebacker and team captain Torian York. We're about to show one for today, but in that win they had this past week at Mississippi State, he had huge numbers. And we have Andrew Monaco, who's going to join us in about 20 minutes. He's the voice of A&M athletics, and he'll join us on their game coming up with LSU. This young man, Torian York, played right here in our backyard at Temple High School. Great player. Mike Elko, our captain, Torian York, and our 12th man have spoken. Wear black Saturday night at Kyle Field. We need the 12th man this weekend. That is a game between two teams that maybe even 3 to 4 weeks ago we weren't sure where they would be, and both of them have gotten better. Hell of a game on Saturday. 6:30, I think, is the kick between the Tigers and also the Aggies. And it's a great day. Torian York's having a great run, a local kid. At the same time, they're going black.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one heck of an atmosphere on Saturday night. I'm jealous of Garrett that he's going to be there. It's going to be raucous. This is the most confident that these two teams have been in a couple years. LSU's coming in confident. They're coming in confident. The crowd's going to be wearing black. And if there's ever a fan base who gets the message on what to wear, like if you send out the rankings of let's get in and do this, it's the Penn State whiteout and A&M and whatever. Like if they do a red, white, I've been to a couple of their red, white, and blue outs, which are amazing. When they do a maroon out, when they do a white out, when they do a blackout, people are on board. And the other thing is, if you walk in and you're not in dress code, they let your ass have it. Like they really do. So they do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. It's always fun to see people putting a little extra uniform spice on a game. I don't know. I saw a lot of people that didn't seem to like this that were A&M fans.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people that did not. I don't know, and I'm not up on my uniform history when it comes to A&M football, but I saw some people pushing back on this, maybe because they've had bad luck or they just don't like the look of them. But either way, yeah, we can talk to Andrew Monaco about that. They could wear all white, all maroon, all black, whatever. It's going to be an interesting game with LSU. I think LSU might wear all white based on what I'm seeing, so that's a cool contrast. And beyond that, that's just the game itself will be good and a nice little barometer matchup in the SEC. So we've seen them have some crazy games before. I wouldn't be surprised to see another crazy one given that these two teams are in pretty similar territory right now.
By the way, there's a game Saturday, Baylor and Oklahoma State. Grayson Grundhafer from our site, Sikkim365.com, he's on every Friday. He put together a list since October 22nd of 2022. We've referred to the streak of 2 years where they had basically nothing after wins on the road against Texas Tech and Oklahoma in 2022. Since that time, their home conference games, Kansas State lost. TCU, of course they lost. Texas lost. Texas Tech, Iowa State, Houston, West Virginia, BYU, all of them losses by an average of almost 2 touchdowns per game. That is a terrifying streak, and of course a lot of Baylor fans know it, and so does everybody else at Baylor. But that, when he put it in that perspective, I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. And we knew it's awful, but I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah, it's been bad. They've got an opportunity to, and they've not been good at this, to kick a team while they're down. That's what you needed. I know that's it's not good.
They kicked themselves a lot.
It's not good. Like if Emory was really depressed and I came in here and be like, oh yeah, by the way, life is a never-ending black hole and it's only going to get worse for you, that wouldn't be a good thing of me to do as a friend. But in sports, when your opposing team comes in and says like, oh my God, life is never an ending black hole, you absolutely kick them while they're down. That's what you do. Baylor's not been great at that. They need to do it this weekend because Oklahoma State's in a free fall.
Yeah, they've not won any games that really matter for 2 years. I think we've pretty well documented all that with the various conversations about the lack of meaningful wins. Last week changed that slightly, but it remains to be seen how good Tech is, although they are off to a nice start. That was a rough reality check on where they actually stand, getting beat like that at home. So I think there's a golden opportunity for Baylor this weekend. I know why some people are a little on edge because they've been terrible at home. Haven't beat anybody meaningful in general. Haven't beat anybody meaningful at home in 2 years. So, I hope for their sake they win this game, because if not, then all the goodwill that you just built up the last few days is going to go right out the window again. And sure, you can try to drum it up and convince people that, hey, we've got the players from 13 and 14 coming back the following week, and it's TCU, and I'm sure you'll still have a gathering for that. But as far as people caring, they're not going to care if you drop this game this weekend.
I agree. Yeah. That's like I said yesterday. Somebody asked me, are they going to be able to make a run and win 4 or 5 the last 5 or whatever? I was like, can we see if they can win 2 in a row? Let's see if they win 2 in a row. Not being condescending, but let's see. I think they have to prove it too, not only to the fan base, but they need to prove it to themselves. All right, Paul Catalina, we'll let you take this one. Your Florida State Seminoles are all in spotlights throughout the year. Unfortunately, some of them, or most of them, are not very kind.
This is honestly the worst stat I have ever read in my life. I have not read another one. Like maybe outside of some of the Deshaun Watson stuff earlier this year before he got injured, where of the last 10 years out of 798 quarterbacks, he was 795th and all the things this year. Yeah. That was really bad. But there are 661 NCAA football programs in this country. This is from Tim Reynolds. He's a writer out of Miami. There are 25 that have not scored more than 21 points in a game this season. There's 1 FCS school, 5 Division II schools, 18 Division III schools, and 1 FBS school, and that's Florida State. Now, I've done a little math on how much they're paying to score points. Mike Norvell calls the plays.
$6 million a year.
He's $10 million a year.
Oh, okay.
He's $10 million a year. Their offensive coordinator and offensive line coach, Alex Atkins, one of the highest paid at that position in the country. He's making $1.25 million a year as the offensive line coach and offensive coordinator, kind of in name only because Mike Norvell calls the plays. Tony Tokar is the quarterback's coach, making $600,000. They've got the wide receivers coach, Ron Dugans, making $650,000. 2 other coaches making over $500,000 for a grand total of $13.5 million they're spending to score more than 21 points in a game. That is going to be remedied in the offseason, or Mike Norvell's going to be in trouble in 2025.
Wow, and he was on top of the world. Of course, everything kind of fell apart. It was not his fault because of the injury to Jordan Travis, and then, of course, the not getting the playoffs. And from that point on, they have been a dumpster fire. And this year has been not shocking that they weren't going to be as good, but still, it's Florida State, for God's sakes. And they have not had any sniff whatsoever to be a part of anything since the opening game in Dublin, Ireland. Now, Eric Morris is the head football coach at North Texas. They're going to play Tulane Saturday on ESPN2. The game is going to be at 11 o'clock kickoff. Now, remember all the times that Oklahoma started getting a little bit noisy about having to play 11 o'clock kicks, and yet that is the prime game. That is on Saturdays for Fox. That's their game. And yes, they have others, but that's kind of their game. Eric Morris said, talking to the Mean Green faithful, we have to get out of this mold of people not wanting to come enjoy these Saturdays together and cheer. It's a little bit of Neil Brown there, but homecoming's a great time to do it. Yet everybody who's proud of the school, proud of their degree, wants to come back and watch the Mean Green play. Here's the part that I love. People complain about 11 o'clock. Get over yourself. You can go back to the Southland Conference and pick when you want. We don't get to pick it.
Yeah.
There's going to be some people like, who the hell are you? What is wrong with 11 o'clock start? College students are maybe hungover. I don't know.
I never. I mean, maybe it was because I went to college on the East Coast and it was noon and not 11. But believe me, we were drinking beer at 10:30 in the morning. I mean, it wasn't.
Okay, do you know why they're on ESPN2? Because it's a pretty important game.
And they're good.
And they've been picked up by the national network. Yeah.
No, I don't understand this complaining about an 11 o'clock kick. I'll never get it. But again, I've been on the other side of the wall for so long. I never will. You know, I'll just never. I mean, that's somebody's personal opinion. I think it's silly.
Yeah, I mean, he was asked about fans coming back for homecoming. I don't think there's like a strike occurring outside the stadium that people are demanding the kickoff time change or anything. I think he's just answering a question about people coming back. So I assume he's talking about if there's anybody complaining about the kickoff time, that's what he's referring to. But I honestly cannot believe for 1 second that there's really that much of a mob of people that are complaining about this. I think it's another straw man thing we're probably talking about here. There is an element, like Oklahoma definitely complained about it a lot, and they got their wish. You got the Big 12. Congratulations. You traded winning for kickoff times that are better and a lot more money. And a lot more money. That's what you traded it for. But you traded your history in winning in some cases for more money and better kickoff times. So we'll revisit that in 10 years, and you'll probably be happy with that decision because you'll still be around in a big conference. But I don't know where the winning will be 10 years from now. We'll see on that. But, yeah, I think this is much ado about nothing, and it's not really a program we think a lot about when we talk about rabid crowds to begin with, or any kind of controversies or anything. So, I don't know. I think it's – if you heard it, maybe it's not as bad, and even then I just don't think it's that bad. He's just, riffing on people who complain about early kickoffs, and There's people that just complain about everything no matter what. But if you want one thing, sometimes you got to have a trade-off. So if you want a little bit of attention and a better broadcasting channel, then you got to have a different kickoff time than whatever it is you would prefer, 2:30 or 6 or whatever it is these small amount of people he's talking about would rather have. But, yeah, I think it mostly goes back to just college kids don't want to get up early after partying on Friday night. But they're also not the majority of people that are in the stands. So I don't think it'll be too much of an issue for them. And if it is, then maybe your fan base just isn't that great. And it's not about even the kickoff times. They're just not ready to be a great fan base because great fan bases don't complain about the kickoff times. Although Oklahoma, a little asterisk, they do have a great fan base, but it was so constant that it felt like that's all they ever played in.
Yeah, no, it got to the point like they felt it was like, why are we having to play at 11 o'clock? And that's one of Fox's, again, it's a premier game for them. And they were a part of the Big 12, and they still are. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and you guys don't go too deep into it. Craig, did you know what was going on with a couple of players in Penn State and some sort of investigation?
No, I did not.
You did not?
No.
Paul, you said you did.
Oh, I mean, I didn't until
All right, I did not either.
Yeah.
Then I saw this video. This is from John Kincaid, but I saw a video of James Franklin getting in front of the media, and you could hear the media relations person say that, have questions about Wisconsin, who they play next. And then James Franklin came up to the mic, and somebody asked him about a couple of former players who are alleged to have been alleged to have raped somebody. He then, I think he stood there for a second, walked off. And then the media relations person said, is there anyone else who has questions about... Oh, no, someone walked up to the mic in the media relations and said, we have released a statement that is all we're going to say at this particular time. And then as he walked off, somebody said, any questions about Wisconsin? Franklin came back. I never would have known there was this story had it not been James Franklin walking away from a microphone, which then made it a story. And then I started wondering, why was he upset about the question?
Well, and I know that here's the thing that a lot of media relations departments get wrong. Like when you say he's not going to comment on it, they still have to ask to make him not comment on it because then it blows back on the media for capitulating to Penn State. Penn State should know this better than anyone. That they have to at least let the people ask the question before they no comment. You can say no comment, but you still have to ask because the minute that the media looks like it's in your pocket, then they have credibility problems.
Yep. I agree. You'd think you would learn from a lot of the lessons throughout college sports or anything in particular.
And I would like to point out, in Penn State's case, it was not a sports reporter who broke the big story. It was an actual news reporter who did a lot of work on it, a very young reporter who did all that work on it in their big scandal. So a lot of times the sports reporters are not the ones who get that because of the relationship they have to have with the athletic programs, but you still have to ask. We've been through it ourselves.
Yep.
You have to ask. If they say no comment, that's fine, but the duty of the media is to ask the question.
Yep.
The duty of the subject is not to answer. They have their rights as a human being to answer or not answer the question, but we, in our job, as part of the integrity that we have to hold up, is you have to ask the question.
All right, so the Friday after the story about Samu Kawachu that broke, we were out in front of Baylor practice, and Art Browse was made available to the media, and that didn't end very well either.
No.
Can we ask about SMU? Not a good sign, not a good scene. And you wonder, should they have even had him available? But you got to eventually face the question. So, yes, we've been there before. Here is a new look of the Foster Pavilion, which was opened back at the start of the year for Baylor men's and women's basketball. And remember, there was where is that camera? Up in the snowbird seat, way up top. And it was because of the design and because of also premium seating. So they have changed that mid-level, which was a high-level camera that looked like the old, what's the one in Stillwater? What's the arena in Stillwater? Because they used to have that down, like shooting straight down. They have done this. This is now the new look of the Foster Pavilion with what will be the camera that gets a lot of the game.
Okay, the biggest reason that they had a bad camera angle last year is because when they opened the facility, it wasn't completely finished, and they put it there. They had no time for anybody, for Baylor Vision, for ESPN, for CBS, or anybody that actually does that for a living to come in and test it. They got to go in and play on they practiced on the floor on Monday and played the first game on a Wednesday or whatever it was, or Wednesday and played the first game on a Saturday. That was how that rolled out last year at Foster Pavilion. So nothing was ever done about, nobody could come in and test the camera angle. They roll the first game out there. Everybody complains. They're like, well, we'll try to do something, but we can't do anything now. We're trying to make sure the bathrooms work so that you guys can come in here.
The second floor was not even done yet.
Yeah, you would walk through some places and you'd be like, is this hard hat only right here? Did I veer off the path? So now it's done. Now they've reconfigured. I always thought it would be an easy fix, but they were going to need the off season to do it. But because they accelerated so fast to get in there and create a home field advantage that does not exist at the Farrell Center, they had to give up some things, and it was the camera angle and all the concession stands being open, of which now no longer a problem.
Yeah, so it's a beautiful place if you have not been there. And so the camera angles. Craig, anything on that?
No, not really.
All right,
no.
When we come back, Andrew Monaco, voice of Texas A&M. Hell of a game coming up Saturday night against LSU. His thoughts about Mike Elko, year one, and much more with the A&M football team, LSU and A&M. And Andrew Monaco, voice of Texas A&M, is next on 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental. Dr. Steve Childress is my dentist, and I'm so glad he is. I was looking for a new dentist back when who I had before, who was fine, but was not doing well, was sick. So I was looking for somebody, and I remember that Dr. Childress before had told me, hey, you come here, you and I were going to make this work. And so I called him. It was during COVID. Eventually, I was able to get to the front door. And yes, the first time he saw me, he looked around, does what what you should do, kind of like someone inspecting your car. And he saw this and this and this and this. This is going to be a problem. This is going to have to come out. And I knew all that was going to happen because I had taken care of my dental work to the minimum extreme, brushing my teeth, occasionally flossing. And I was one of those who would floss like, oh, I got a dentist appointment in a week. I got to start flossing now. Too late. Dr. Steve Childress has fixed all of what he saw back 4 years ago, and there are still a couple of things that I got to deal with that are a little bit more major, I guess you could say, construction when it comes to my front bridge and much more. The guy is amazing. I've met him at his dentist office on a Friday evening because I had a tooth on my back right molar that was excruciating. He fixed it that night just to get me through the weekend and then did everything else on a Monday morning. Dr. Steve Childress in Robinson, Texas. Proud to say it's Stonewood Dental. He's my dentist.
It's Jeep Adventure Days at Allen Samuels in Waco, and the deals are hotter than ever. Drive a new 2024 Jeep Compass Latitude for only $24,995. Or how about leasing a new Fiat 500e for only $149 a month? Whether you're ready for an adventure in a Jeep or zipping around in a stylish Fiat, we've got you covered. Hurry to Allen Samuels in Waco today.
Come by. Let's be friends. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Here we are, 365 Sports, the voice of A&M, Andrew Monaco. In a moment, Craig Smoak, you want to mention a note before we get to Andrew about college football last night that was a shocker.
Liberty.
Sorry, thought we were going to Andrew Monaco.
No, we were waiting on him. He's here now.
Yeah, Liberty lost last night. It was a big upset win, and Kennesaw State, one of the worst programs in all of college football, got the win, and so I'm glad that they eliminated the talking point about Liberty and their schedule, and we don't have to hear about them being unbeaten at the end of the year. Pretty shocking results, given both teams and where they sat, and that was a great upset. 27-game losing streak and beat Liberty and knocked them out of the conversation. Andrew Monaco, the voice of A&M Athletics, with us on 365 Sports. Great to have you. It's been a really nice, after the loss to Notre Dame, it's been a nice climb to who A&M is now, and, of course, the great test Saturday night with LSU, and they've had to do the same thing. Andrew, why are they or appear to be better under Mike Elko to this point?
Yeah, you can see that the offensive line is better than it's been the last 2 years, and that leads to everything, doesn't it? It gives Connor Wigman time, or Marcel Reed for those 3 games, to find their receivers, and it allows Le'Veon Moss to run the way he runs. So I really think the big reason why is they are winning the lines of scrimmage. The offensive line is winning, and that defensive line, as we saw in the second half against Mississippi State, we saw throughout the entire win over number 9 Missouri. That defensive line is an absolute problem. And of course, you guys know you win up front. So that front 4 helps the back 7 for the Aggies. I think strengthening the offensive and the defensive lines have done wonders for the Aggies this season.
Andrew, what has the culture change been like too? I'm not trying to throw Jimbo Fisher completely under the bus, but after you're not successful for a couple of years and you have a type A personality like Jimbo in there, it can wear thin a little bit. We saw guys transferring out kind of maybe because of that. And it seems this year that they have really coalesced around Mike Elko and just a new attitude in the building.
Yeah, I think it's Mike's honesty without making it personal. And I'm saying that's what Jimbo did. But I think, when things went wrong in the past, the fingers were being pointed This year, even after the Notre Dame loss, Mike said, look in the mirror. All of us, not just the players, not just the offense. Coaches have to do it. Staff has to do it. That accountability, I think, from day one. So for the 8 months leading up to the kickoff against Notre Dame and through the 2 months, you have that accountability and you have the consistency of message. This is the way it's going to be. And I think he's got the right people in here as well. There weren't a ton of people who left. You thought that there would. They went in the portal, not a ton left, and you kept the ones you wanted. And I think I call it now talent acquisition in college. The talent that was acquired in the portal fits what Mike Elko wants to do and his coaching staff as well. I think that's been the big thing. And playing their brand of I almost said basketball because we started that this week. Playing the brand of football, I think, has helped where they are competing. They thought they knew what strain and effort was against Notre Dame, and it wasn't good enough. 2 weeks later, they found out what that strain and effort, how that pays off in a win over Florida, and now that becomes the standard. I think you got rid of or some guys who didn't buy in, it was more about themselves, have left. That's what some of the players have told me. They are out, and this is more of a cohesive unit.
Andrew, what did you think of what you saw from Connor Wegman? I know it's been a roller coaster for the quarterback position, just in general this season. Your thoughts, but especially now focusing in on this game in particular.
Yeah, I'm glad to see him healthy and upright, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to be too clever here. The injuries have played a big part of Texas A&M's story the last 2 years, and I get the next man up mentality, and we saw that with Marcel Reed. But you can see why he's such a gamer and such a leader is Connor Wegman. Struggled against Notre Dame, and you know what? He owned up to everything in that struggle, fixed it. I know it was against McNeese State, but I thought that was important, and then that shoulder injury was there, and then he became Marcel Reed's biggest supporter. And I thought Missouri played right into his strength. He's a quarterback who throws into open windows, and they were there against Missouri, and he hit. You can see the arm strength. You can see the confidence. Sometimes that confidence leads to an interception. I can fit that through that window, and sometimes you can't. I just think this offensive line, I think he can trust this offensive line, if that makes sense. In the past, you were waiting for disaster to happen. That's not there now. He has that time. And I have to say, he's got deeper receivers. He's got, I think, more talent at wideout than he's had in the past. And I like seeing that rapport between those wide receivers and Connor Wegman. This is a big test. This will be a big test. LSU's got a big pressure, especially from the edges. The linebackers are outstanding, and LSU always has a great secondary.
We brought this up earlier when we have a chunk of headlines and topics. A&M is going to go with the blackout. I saw Mike Elko's tweet mentioning Torian York and others. Is that a popular decision among the A&M faithful?
For most of them, you guys know that there's old Army and new Army, right? Old Army's not going to want to change from anything, and new Army says, okay, we're good. I think where Mike comes from is this is something that the players want, players deserve because of what they've done. He's not doing it just to do it. And he's not getting away from all the traditions of it's got to be a maroon top and it's got to be white pants. We've seen that mix and match throughout this season. Elijah Robinson did it last year as well when they went all maroon when he was the interim. Mike definitely wants to know what the players would like. There's a reason why there's some music at practice again, but the players earn all of that. If they're not doing anything right, you don't earn the right to say we're going to do this. But the players are in, and I think in this day and age, there's got to be that give and take. Mike knows, hey, we know when we're going to go over the line, and it's something that's not representative or Texas A&M. We're not changing the colors. You know what I mean? We're not going to change the nickname, anything like that. But this is something I think works hand in hand. For the most part, there are, the 12th man in on it. There's still some saying, hey, look, maroon's our color. I totally get it. I think it's going to be an electric atmosphere on Saturday. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. And I know the uniform's about to be revealed, but there will be that blackout on Saturday at Kyle Field.
Andrew, you mentioned Marcel Reed earlier. It is very rare to have two quarterbacks that a team feels comfortable with. You know, if something happens, and really I kind of thought that they probably feel good about Jalen Henderson early in the season too. I know he's had some injuries, but they had two guys that they felt really good about. Marcel Reed got thrown into action in the bowl game last year. I think he probably didn't even think he'd need a helmet that day, and then all of a sudden he's in the second play of the game, and after a while he kind of showed he's calm, cool, collected. They've built a nice little pipeline here if they can keep him. What was that like to see, and what's that like for the team to be able to, have that depth at a position that no one really does have that depth at?
No, but you absolutely need in college football nowadays, right? You've got to be ready because everybody's one play away. I think people were surprised it wasn't Jalen Henderson as the number 2. So I give Marcel a lot of credit for the work that he did over the spring and the fall, because Connor didn't play in the spring. They were making sure that he was going to be healthy. So Marcel got all those reps. And you know what? If we're going to talk about Jimbo Fisher, let's give Jimbo some credit. He took Marcel Reed away from Ole Miss. That was one of the last guys to come in for him, and it's really paid off. Marcel's a heck of a talent. I love what you said. To be able to keep guys, Jalen Henderson could have left. Marcel Reed could have left to go play, knowing that Connor Wigman was the number 1 quarterback. But just a lot of work by Marcel. The thing that sticks out with me is when Albert Regis, who's a defensive lineman, was asked, were you surprised what Marcel did when he came in for Connor? And Albert said, I'm glad he did it to another team because he's been doing that to us every day at practice. You guys know offenses and defenses, they know one another very, very well. It was nice to unleash that on somebody else. And I like the way they play for one another. Like, I like the way they rallied around him. And it was just for the games in which Connor could not go. He was not going to go in there if he were hurt. The shoulder got better. The soreness went away. And Marcel is ready as well. It's a very tight quarterback room. But no, it was impressive. And again, it stays with me what Albert said, like, yeah, go do it to another school because you've been doing to us in practice. But it's impressive. And coaches, I think throughout college football are going to have to know this, that the moment Mike Elko said this about Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, he said, look, this is a kid, came in highly touted, right? It didn't get the starting job, but he filled in every time he had to, stayed when he could have left, bolted for whether it was money or opportunity or starting. He's comfortable in the system. I think he's 7-1 as a starting quarterback. He's kind of done things all the right way, which I think is a way of saying the old school way. So you do have to give these guys credit. Jalen could have left, but he wanted to be a quarterback. Jalen didn't want to change positions. He wanted to be the quarterback. And you battle for that. Same thing with Marcel. And I think it's a good thing to have that kind of depth. And it's something that coaches are going to have to understand. Player retention. We talked about talent acquisition. You have to have player retention. You're recruiting your own 85 players every single day before you get up to that portal window.
How would you describe the level of heat that comes with this A&M LSU rivalry now at this point? And in terms of this year's particular matchup, what jumps off the page to you about the Tigers?
These two schools remind me of one another. Losing the opener, right? The highly anticipated opener, A&M to Notre Dame, LSU to USC, and then finding the rhythm and getting better every week. I wonder if Mike Elko is a little ahead of schedule, if you had to ask him honestly about that, but he's seen that improvement every week. He has said something about, look, you don't want to just play in these games. You want to win games like this. It's one thing to play them. It's another thing to win. And then the expectations kind of change. Brian Kelly's in a little bit of a different situation, is he not? I think that's a different job at LSU. And you have to understand when you get that job, 10 wins sometimes is not enough for Tiger fans. It's really interesting, the expectations, right? When Mike came in, I can tell you guys honestly, I'm in his office, and even before the Notre Dame game, he says, look, I've already told my coaches, I've prepared them. If we beat Notre Dame, get ready for all the stories that say you're a dark horse national champion contender, that A&M's going on the rise. And if we lose, Elko's not the guy. Get rid of this staff. Let's start all over again. That's the way we are in our society, right? So he's very real about that. To put yourself and give yourself that opportunity. Can you give yourself a chance? Can you prepare for this? And remember how you got here. That's the key for both. Brian Kelly's won everywhere he's been. You're the winningest active coach in NCAA. You're doing something right. LSU expects national championships If it's not a national championship, it's a bust. That's just the reality. And when you walk into this sideline, Mike said this, Texas A&M is very different from being on the sideline from Duke. He likes it. He embraces it. And as he's told his players, you chose to come here. I didn't make you come here. You chose. So what do you want out of this? You want to be in games like this. You want to have seasons like this. You want to compete for a national championship. Go out and do it, or prepare for what it takes to go out and do it and collect those victories.
Nobody in the SEC is unbeaten. Some of them have eaten each other up. Obviously, Alabama's lost a couple of games recently. Does that allow, not hope, because that's not what good teams do, but has that kind of changed the way everybody looks at it, even though Georgia was impressive, and we've seen Texas, who was impressive, or Tennessee, or A&M? And does that change the way people look at the SEC right now? Not overall, but inside of the conference.
I think it tells you that how difficult it is. Like Mike always says, the SEC, and he said this at halftime at Mississippi State, yeah, every SEC game is a 4-quarter game. I think the Missouri win was the outlier, not the recipe for what a typical SEC Saturday is. That was different, having a game decided as you go into the fourth quarter. That doesn't have – Vandy put everybody on notice, right, with that win. Georgia's comeback against Alabama was there. Georgia beating Texas. Kentucky giving Georgia a run. South Carolina being good, and they're kind of bubbling under. Ole Miss was a favorite, right? And they're when I say back in the pack, I'm getting used to no longer having an East and a West and knowing, man, if you can just get out of the West and get to Atlanta, you give yourselves a chance. I think it shows the depth and the talent of the SEC, and going from 14 teams to 16 teams, just how good it is and how you're tested every single Saturday. I think it speaks. We always hear about this, right? About conferences. Well, they're top heavy, but the bottom of the conference is terrible. The SEC, I don't care where you're going on a Saturday. If you've got to go on the road, you better play your best football to win. I just think it's reinforcing how difficult and how talented this conference is.
Andrew, Le'Veon Moss is an absolute – has been a monster for them, but Amari Daniels has been good too. When Reuben Owens went down, there was a little bit of a gasp coming out of College Station. And not unjustifiably, because he's got a next-level talent, as we know, but – how much has that gas been kind of maybe eliminated by those two guys?
Yeah, and I like the little change-up for both of them, and I don't think they're the same running backs that were even of last year. Le'Veon has told Mike Elko, I'd like to be the bellwether back, and they knew they had Reuben, and they hated losing Reuben in camp, and Le'Veon has proven that he can be that back. He's gotten himself in shape to the point where he actually feels as good as he's felt in the middle of this season as he has in seasons prior. I'm impressed by the yards after contact by Le'Veon Moss, turning good gains into great gains, and he's really running hard. And I find Amari Daniels, I say sneaky and shifty, and I mean that in a good way. He's finding the hole and getting through it. Now, here's the other thing. That offensive line is giving them holes to run through, but they're getting through them quickly, and they're doing it really with a lot of strength and power, and then you see that speed. I think it's been a big part of the success for Texas A&M to be able to have that kind of running game. The other thing I'm impressed with Le'Veon, the 100-yard games have been against SEC opponents. You know, there are some backs, they like to load up against non-conference and really pad those numbers. I'd say the same thing about Caden Dunham of LSU, 100-yard, and for him as a freshman, it's even more impressive. But when you can run for 100+ against SEC defenses, it says something, and you've seen that from Le'Veon Moss, and keep adding to those career highs on really not a lot of carries, but I really like the changeup as well. I think the other thing is they're complete backs, and they know their role as well in pass protection, how to protect Connor Wigman, and they can catch the ball and be dangerous. A number of times, Amari Daniels has made some clutch third down catches to have drives continue. So being complete backs, strong backs, and showing off that speed, I think it really says a lot about the off-season work that they were doing that's paying off for them now.
All right, so you're the voice of A&M, and I have to ask this because the ticket prices of that game, which, by the way, there's this game late in November, and you know it. Oh, LSU's coming to town, yeah, but they're in the, like, $1,500, $2,500, $3,000, $4,000. I have to ask, how many people have at least contacted you, Andrew, about getting, hey, can you get me tickets for that Texas game?
Well, here's a lot, right? I can't even give you the number of that. Like, hey, I'd love to come to a game. I love when they do that, right? Yeah. I'd love to come to a game. I'm like, Bowling Green is this Saturday. Yeah. Don't be afraid for New Mexico State, right? So now it just becomes this. Oh, you want tickets? Don't ask for Notre Dame, LSU, Missouri, Texas. Sorry, Don't ask for it, right? Yep. No, there's a bunch. Mike Elko is starting to find out now, like all the recruits coming in, how many of those coaches are like, hey, I can deliver that kid. So one kid's coming, he has like 12 coaches asking for tickets as well. So, it's been through the roof.
Andrew, make sure your spotter is well protected that week, because there's going to be somebody in your circle that's like, that guy gets to sit in the booth. Yeah, if I Nancy Kerrigan that guy, then maybe Andrew would be like, who's got good vision, is good with binoculars? Tim. Yeah.
Tim, I need a spotter, so you might as well. I have no idea what happened to mine, but Tim, I need one, so come on. And here's the dirty little secret. They pay us for these games as well.
Oh, yeah, that's that. Oh, they do? Oh, my Lord, you've got a good deal.
I just said the quiet part out loud, didn't I?
Hey, enjoy it. I know you will. Thank you, Andrew. We appreciate it when you jump on with us. Heck of an atmosphere and a great game. Have fun with the broadcast. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's Andrew Monaco, voice of Texas A&M, with us as they get ready for LSU coming up on Saturday night. Coming up, Max Olsson from ESPN. He's next, and this is 365 Sports. Baylor alumni engagement. Doug Furch and Paul Thorpe. They're going to have lunch with a legend coming up a week from tomorrow, and there will be former players from the 2013 and 14 Big 12 championship teams. Bryce Petty, Eddie Lackey, Levi Norwood, among others, will be speaking at the luncheon. It will be a week from tomorrow. Lunch with a Legend, put on by the Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement. For more information, go to Facebook page at Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement, Baylor Alumni, and also Baylor University, baylor.edu.
It's time to score big savings at the Kickoff to Savings event on GMC Trucks at Richard Carr GMC. Take the winning drive with the Texas Truck MVP. GMC Sierra is the best truck on the road. Save $9,000 on 2024 GMC Sierra SLT models in stock with 2010 or newer approved trade-in. Plus, qualified buyers get 1.9% financing and no payments for 90 days. See dealer for details. Save big and score your deal at the Kickoff to Savings event at Richard Carr GMC.
Richard Carr, they have the truck for you.
Edward Jones Financial Advisors Josh Satterfield and John Maddox understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? When you invest with Edward Jones Financial Advisors Josh Satterfield, John Maddox, and Sean Carter, they will provide their time and experience to help you reach your goals. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Josh Satterfield and Sean Carter on Wycon Road off Bagby, and John Maddox on Sapphire Boulevard in Hewitt. Proud sponsors of Midway Panthers football. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Membership SIPC.
El Conquistador Restaurants are a very proud sponsor of the Midway Panthers, have been owned and operated by the Gonzalez family since 1969. El Conquistador is recognized annually as a local favorite with their fast and friendly service. Dine in or order takeout and enjoy your favorite Tex-Mex items as well as several traditional menu items. Catering is also available with 3 locations to serve you: Waco, Belmead, and Hillsboro. The Gonzalez family thanks you in Waco and the surrounding area for your continued support of 55 years in business. Go Panthers!
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student-athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student-athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student-athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Containing only 95 calories and 2.6 carbs.
By the way, one of the latest Max Olsson tweets from earlier today, notable players who got bumps in their ratings in the EA Sports College game, a video game. Max Olsson joins us now on 365 Sports. Do you think when this first came out, they didn't have the ability to bump during the season, did they? Till now?
They did not. And, I think that we're obviously seeing the value of that. It's fun to see like the great players get boosted during the season. Ashton Jeanty is now one of the best players in the game, deservedly so. But I got to say, guys, my mentions today are just filled with people fighting about Cam Ward versus Shadur Sanders. I did not expect that.
Well, I mean, are they?
They're 1 and 2.
Yeah.
When it comes to
kind of splitting hairs?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you be kind of splitting hairs with that?
Yeah, I mean, they're both extremely good. They're both they're the 2 best quarterbacks in the game. I don't know that there's any reason to be upset about where they're at, but that's the internet. So wasn't trying to troll anybody, but there you go.
Max, a rash of players, I say a rash, but a lot of them, and we talked about it a little bit, about opting out during the year and redshirting. You're the guy who follows the transfer portal better than anyone in the country. How does this affect, like Caullin Lacy, who did this yesterday, is probably the best overall player this year to do this. How does this affect their recruiting right now since the portal rules have been changed? Like, can anybody, I mean, I'm sure people are calling him, but what does his recruitment look like if he does decide, in fact, to leave Louisville?
Yeah, starting on October 1st, guys were able to start entering the transfer portal. So we've seen, I think, about 20 to 25 scholarship players already go in. And, the thing that stands out, obviously, is that the vast majority of those guys are players who have already transferred once in their career. So I think sometimes you're just having guys who transfer to a place, under recruiting promises or just a belief, hey, I'm going to go there, I'm going to be a starter, this is going to kind of fix things for me. And then you get to that place and, you're not playing the role you thought you would, or, in the case of Caullin Lacy, he had a collarbone injury in fall camp. And so you think you're going there to be a 1,000-yard receiver and really blow up and be one of the best in the ACC, and then you fall behind a little bit in fall camp, and I think that's a move there to since you've got the redshirt season to try and get back. And I think you got to remember this time of year too. That's an example of like, gosh, there's so many guys that are dealing with injuries, even if they're like currently playing, and so I think when you've got that extra year, I'm sure that factors in for these players and their parents and their reps and everything of like, man, what's the kind of the best way forward here? So I'd be curious to see if Caullin Lacy's trying to stay at Louisville. I don't know, unless it's like really injury related. You don't see too many cases of a guy opting out and then just kind of, showing up again for winter workouts there in January.
Max started off talking a little about the Heisman. I mean, it's Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty as 2 of the top guys there, as you already mentioned as well. But Jeanty, with this Heisman campaign, like we heard Hunter kind of not criticizing him directly, but talking about, hey, running backs, like, they've had their Heisman, and like who's played and done multiple things like me. What do you think of Boise State and UNLV tomorrow? That's a matchup that's obviously got a little sizzle to it, and obviously will play a big role in whatever odds Ashton Jeanty has to become this unlikely Heisman.
Yeah, I fired up for that game. I think that's one of those games that, I think we would care about it regardless, but I think it's probably one of those that you'd say, man, I think that's the college football playoff setup with the 12 teams is going to drive a lot more eyeballs to that game on Friday night, and I think that's really exciting. And UNLV, fascinating to see what kind of solutions they can come up with because, everybody spends all week trying to figure out how to slow down Ashton Jeanty, and just nothing works, even for Oregon and all the studs they have. So I think that, people want to see can Ashton Jeanty do it against better competition. I think that's just kind of be the knock on him is how difficult is the schedule he's played and stuff like that. And so can't wait to see how they do. And, UNLV is, they came up short in overtime against Syracuse, but, they've been winning out. Like that's a really good team that had all the drama in September, but Haj Malik Williams, the transfer, stepped in and did a great job at quarterback. And so, I think Barry Odom, is going to be a pretty hot candidate again here in a month, and this is a big opportunity for him and his program to, really make a statement.
One thing that Jeanty, if people do bring up who they're playing, I mean, from start to finish, 192 yards and 3 touchdowns against Oregon. That can't hurt him down the stretch.
No, and you got to factor. I mean, there's kind of some invisible stats there too, because there's 2 games that they won in blowouts where they did not play him in the second half, and so. I think Spencer Danielson and his staff, they've really been very intentional about, this is about preserving Ashton Jeanty, keeping him healthy, keeping him fresh, because, you're trying to play, 14 games at Boise State this season. And so, to their credit, they've not gone out there and just kind of padded stats, which you could because the guy's unstoppable. So, I think that, and, the stuff from Hunter, I get it. I think we all want to see Travis Hunter healthy and playing at a high level on both sides of the ball. And what he does is special and does deserve special consideration. And he's one of those guys, kind of like, when we've seen Lamar Jackson or Johnny Manziel, where it's regardless of where the team finishes, he's one of the best players in the country.
Max Olsson with us on Thursdays at 4 o'clock from ESPN.
Max, A&M and LSU at Kyle Field. We just had Andrew Monaco on, the voice of the Aggies. It's going to be a blackout for A&M. LSU's in the all-whites. Both these teams are, I think, better than everybody thought they would be. How's this one shake out?
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. I think that Texas A&M really from that Missouri game on has been out to prove something. I think they've really kind of started to put it all together. I like the way that Connor Wigman's been playing, and I think that that's a team that's just gaining confidence under Mike Elko, and I think they have a chance to pull this off. LSU has been in a bunch of close games. I think that gives them some advantage here under pressure. Obviously, the way that they beat Ole Miss was a big step for that program, but it's a great quarterback matchup. I think Garrett Nussmeier is really still pretty underrated and is just, he can really sling it and is terrific. And I think that, I think the A&M defense is going to be a challenge for him. So I like A&M in this game. And I think that if the Aggies can get on a roll, man, we're setting up for an all-timer there when the Longhorns come to town.
Max, does the Cornhuskers, or do the Cornhuskers cover the 25.5-point spread as they go to Columbus? I know that was rough last week. Your thoughts on Indiana and that performance, but also where Matt Rule and company find themselves? They just need one win, but obviously it wasn't in the cards last week, and it's probably not in the cards this week against the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I mean, that number probably wouldn't be quite that high if Nebraska had been able to keep it close with Indiana, but really they just got beat up from start to finish by the Hoosiers, who are just so confident. I mean, that team is incredible to watch. I hope that Curtis Rourke can get healthy and get back pretty quickly here, because when they're firing on all cylinders, they're pretty dominant. So that's a fun team to watch. And I just think Nebraska, you got exposed in that one. And I'm sure Matt Rule is trying to push all the right buttons this week to try and get this team locked in. And underdog mentality and all that. I think they can keep it within the number, but man, I think this is a tough time to catch Ohio State when they've got they're coming off a bye week and they've got revenge on their mind from Morgan. They're out to make a statement.
Max, if they have one game that appears could get them to 6. Now, Wisconsin and Iowa have owned them for the most part, and Ohio State's a loss. And UCLA's a home game. If they throw up on themselves, even with how much we love Matt, I don't know if I can ever recover.
UCLA is like the one you got to win. I think if you find a way to lose that game, that would be really alarming. Let's not even think about it. But I think it's a bowl team. I think it's a bowl team, but I think it's and Indiana was not maybe representative of the progress they've made. That was a really big humbling that they got on the road there. But I think it's a Nebraska team that is going to be in close games the rest of the way here, besides maybe Ohio State. And we're going to find out, can you win more than you lose on those tight ones that are going to come down to it in the fourth, and that's where you need to see some experience and growth from Raiola and an offense that can be productive.
Max, I'm going to read a stat to you, and I need some therapy on it. We talked about it earlier, but this is from Tim Reynolds. There are 661 NCAA football programs in the country. There are 25 that have not scored more than 21 points in a game this season. 1 FCS school, 5 D2 schools, 18 D3 schools, 1 FBS school, and that's FSU. Why should I not move?
The only one?
Yes. Why should I not move to the desert, live in a cave, Obi-Wan Kenobi style?
Because it's too hard
You're
to
telling
dig
me like Kent State is the worst team in the country, and even they've done it?
They did it last night?
Oh, my God.
Or Kennesaw State did this, yeah.
Let me ask you, if I could give you a chance, Paul, let's just wave the magic wand. We're going back to January. You get a do-over with this team. What would you fix?
I would not bring in DJU.
Okay.
I'd rather get somebody on the way up than the way down. And I would also let the coaches that got offers leave and hire guys who have regularly been in the playoff hunt onto the staff to recruit. That's what I would have done.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's just one of those, and they're just in such a weird spot where it's like you have the playoff snub, so then you want to go reload, but obviously you lost so much NFL talent that you had to kind of assume it was going to be a rebuilding year. But I certainly, even in your sort of skeptical assessment of Florida State, you would never guess it would be this bad this season.
No, I mean, no. I would have thought that their offense would be bad if they were only scoring 21, right? That's what I thought the bottom was. Oh, no. There is no bottom. There is no bottom. It's just a pit of despair, Max.
It's crazy to think, too, that when it came down to it, I mean, Cam Ward almost picked, it was Miami versus Florida State. And if he were at Florida State right now, he'd be getting crushed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he probably.
He would not be having a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. He probably looked and said, man, Jordan Travis is really good, but that offensive line at Miami is actually a lot better. And people didn't realize it because they haven't had a good quarterback in a decade.
Yeah. That's who do they have this week? Pretty big one, right?
Well, Miami and FSU. That's what happens.
Used to be a big game.
Used to be, yeah.
I didn't even realize that was this weekend.
Preseason, I would have said a lot of eyeballs on that game. Maybe not now.
No. The only eyeballs on that game would be the ones that Miami rips out of Florida State's skull. That's how bad it's going to be.
Max, any thoughts on a couple of close calls in the Big 12 last week? BYU survives 38-35, and their counterparts, Iowa State, the two unbeaten, survive as well 38-35. I know it's not the conference on the forefront of most people's minds. That's very evident in watching a lot of national broadcasts these days, but there is a little bit of excitement, especially there at the top. Any thoughts on the Big 12 and how it's shaping up?
Yeah, I thought extremely impressive for those two. Iowa State to if you throw 2 pick sixes in a game and you give up 300 yards rushing, there's no way you win that game against anybody in this conference, right? So the resilience by Rocco Becht in that game, I thought his game-winning drive was excellent. That's a team that's really banged up. Their bye's coming at a good time, but they are just a tough team that between the Iowa game and that game, they have figured out a way in some tough spots to rally back and win. That was. I actually did stay up and watch BYU Oklahoma State, and kind of amazing the way that they were able to pull that off in the final minute.
Mm-hmm.
I think Retzlaff is so underrated and so impressive this year. A guy that just really wasn't on any of our radar as could this guy be one of the best in the Big 12? So those are really impressive teams. And I have a question for you guys because I was thinking about this week. This is I don't know that a team in the Big 12 is going to go 12-0. It's possible. It's possible, but I'm not that confident in that at this point. So the scenario I wonder is, could we have, and you could pick any assortment of teams, but I kind of think there's a good chance we're going to have a three-way tie at the top in terms of 11-1 teams. Whether it's like, Iowa State, BYU, Kansas State, something like that. I think that's going to be really that's going to be dicey. And then also I think for the Big 12, this is going to be one of those years where you kind of wonder, like, okay, in that scenario, who is, if you're trying to like make the case for a second Big 12 team in the playoff, is it the team that lost the conference title game, or is it the team that stayed at home?
I've been saying,
I think.
Sorry, I've been saying that the best case scenario is that BYU, Iowa State win out because they don't play each other, and then they meet in Arlington and they burn the house down with a hell of a football game that leaves doubts about, what would happen if they played again. Like that would, I think they've got to leave like such little room for the committee to have any kind of an argument that would be like the most surefire way, because to your point, any other way, like K-State beats Iowa State at the end of the year and then they're suddenly, Iowa State's ding. Like, I don't know how it would work on who would get in, but I think you've got to have two unbeatens and they tear the house down in a 41-40 type of game, something like that. Otherwise, I think you're leaving the door open to get only one team in.
Yeah, or similarly, like if you've got one 12-0 team, can they go to Arlington, play well, end up losing, but then people feel like you still got to put them in, like we saw with TCU a few years ago. Like that's kind of wishful thinking, probably, because then you're in this debate of like, the LSUs and Alabamas and Notre Dames and all that. There's just going to be a lot of like big brands that are kind of fighting for those last spots. So yeah, I'm fascinated to see not only kind of who ends up in Arlington, but like it's going to be such a rough road for these teams in November. Like who you lose to ends up mattering a ton.
Absolutely, and it should. And it's what you said there. I caught it. I know you got to go, but is that they feel like they have to put them in. Like that's not the discussion for any teams in the SEC or the Big Ten that are pretty big names. It's not that, well, we have to put them in. They're going to get in, and otherwise you got to kind of fight, scratch, and claw if you're not one of those two conferences. You have very little room for error.
Yeah, and you could say that, well, this is just like media perception, but I do think it's reality. Like, I think when you watch the SEC and Big Ten title games, they're really going to be inconsequential. Like, there's seeding purposes, but both of those teams are in the playoff, And so I think for the Big 12 and the ACC, the challenge this year is how strong of a foot forward can you put with your number two in that game, and if you have an upset, can you, does that mess everything up, or can you get two teams in this playoff? I think that's going to be an interesting little debate there, but you need your teams to be as strong as possible when they get there.
No question. Max, thank you very much. Appreciate it as always. What anything you're working on, a story for, obviously you got most of them out for this week, but anything juicy for next week?
Got a lot coming. Yeah, stay tuned.
All right. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. I knew he was going to tell us. He's not going to tell us. It would blow it. And then somebody else would start writing about it. But Max Olsson with us Thursdays, most every Thursday at 4 o'clock. We're not done. A lot to get to today. We'll have Craig's Off the Radar at 4:45. Paul's Top 5 to close out the show. Mickey Spagnola, 5:25. But coming up, Eli Letterman, ESPN.com, on many things college football. And this is 365 Sports. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center between Valley Mills and also Richland Drive in Waco. I was on the phone earlier today with Josh. They're going to be at in the middle of all of that Baylor homecoming. They're going to be at a brewing company, and they're going to also have their cigars that they have against the back wall of their 48-foot walk-in humidor with the Texas brand cigars available. I don't have the exact times yet, but I'll let you know. Josh called me about that. Actually left me a voicemail yesterday, then I spoke with him on the phone a little bit earlier today. Oh, my goodness. Macanudo, H. Upman, Padron, Cohiba, Romeo and Julieta, Artur Fuente, my favorite, Rocky Patel, and you can go on and on and on. And then on the 48-foot walk-in humidor, you go off to the right, there's a wall filled with Texas brand cigars, military and veterans who have their cigar companies and brands as well. That's what they do. It's Don Humidor and Coffee Beans, Joshua and Cheyenne, between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
365 Sports in the afternoons, 3 to 6 Central Time. Thanks to Max Olsson. Appreciate Andrew Monaco, voice of Texas A&M, being a part of the show. And now, joined by Eli Letterman. He joins us. Eli, national recruiting plus college football reporter with ESPN with us on 365 Sports. Eli, you're too young to know too much of this, but this seems to be, and we have upset weekends, usually 2 or 3 each year, but this seems to be each weekend, not chaos, but you just don't know what to expect. Do you agree?
You're exactly right. For one, I didn't know I was going to have to follow Max Olson's tough act. That's a big act to follow, but you are exactly right. I mean, we're not only getting, obviously this is the whole point of conference realignment, for all the bad you could say it's done, tearing down historic conferences, all that, and that has taken its toll. This is what we did it for, right? It was for these big matchups we're getting every weekend, but we're also getting matchups that are great that we wouldn't have expected, and matchups that, even going into Saturday that we won't know are going to turn into some of the best ones. I mean, I think you look up and down the top 25 and, whether it's Notre Dame, Navy, wouldn't have predicted that would have been a big one at the start of the year. Texas, Vanderbilt, I still feel pretty good about the Longhorns despite last weekend, but Vanderbilt has shown us that, they can keep things interesting. And I think you just look up and down that national schedule and it feels like even more than ever in college football, the beauty of it has always been
the chaos, it's even more chaotic than ever, and in that sense, more fun than ever this fall.
Notre Dame and Navy play this week. And if you looked at Notre Dame's schedule at the beginning of the year, you'd have been like, okay, they have Army and Navy. That's probably wins for both of them. And then they've got, the toss-up games for USC and Florida State and A&M and all that. Well, now you can take USC and FSU out of that and replace them with Army and Navy. How wild is that?
It's unbelievable. Like, again, talk about unpredictable. And some of that, too, I guess, goes into, like, the portal world. I think Florida State's the perfect example this year of how you can get it wrong with the portal and how we can all be wrong about these teams going into the year. But no one would have predicted this with Navy, with Army, and both of those schools. Obviously, always going to be tied together. They're headed for, what could be a pretty fascinating finish if they can both finish up top of their conference, maybe playing for a title game, and then a couple weeks later playing their traditional annual game. But Navy has totally revamped its offense. We know what they've been about, and they haven't changed what they've been about, but they kind of took a dive in the last 3-4 seasons in terms of the offensive production, and it's completely back. And they've got, one of the nation's top offenses this year. So does Army. And these are going to be good tests for Notre Dame. We'll see how much of a test this one proves to be, and same for Army in a few weeks. But I think if you're Notre Dame and they've lost guys, obviously they lost a pretty rough game in September with Northern Illinois. This is a chance for them. If they go out in this game, in the Army game, and really just take care of business and show who they are, that's going to go a long way in terms of their playoff pursuit over the next month and a half.
Eli, you had a note about Julian Lewis, the 5-star USC quarterback commit. He's visiting Colorado. I know I've seen his name attached to them quite a bit over the past few months, and just a lot about his recruitment in general. What can you tell us just about kind of his situation, Colorado's involvement? And the weird thing about them, right, is that they don't typically recruit traditionally. There's also the whole, like, hey, come play here. Is Deion going to be here? I wonder, like, how do they navigate that in some of these situations to the best of your knowledge?
Yeah, there's lots to unpack there. I mean, starting with Julian Lewis, he's been one of, if not the top prospects in the 2025 class, basically since he started playing as a varsity starter in Georgia in his sophomore year. And the reality with him, this has gone back and forth. There were times over the summer where, Auburn was in the mix, and Colorado and Indiana have been in the mix, which are not schools you typically think of, stealing a high-level quarterback from Lincoln Riley. It quieted down in August, and it seemed like things were pretty secure between Julian Lewis and USC. And it might still be that way, but fact is, it's this time of year he's going out to Colorado, and things aren't going well for Lincoln Riley at USC. And that's going to be, in its own right, something to watch over the next month, because USC has recovered in its recruiting for 2025 after kind of a tough start to the summer. But Julian Lewis is at Colorado this weekend. He'll be there for the Cincinnati game. And you know what? Like, Deion Sanders is taking his shots. And you're right, they don't recruit traditionally. If you go look at their class right now, don't know the exact number, but there's only a handful of guys in there. But they have kind of shown that their move is to move late. And they're targeting a bunch of guys. They're trying to flip some guys. They're going after some major uncommitted guys in this class. And the fact is, for Deion Sanders, this has gone about as well as you could have hoped this fall. For all the people who were maybe predicting it would be a disaster. They're 5-2, right, going into this weekend. And so they position themselves to attack here late in the cycle, which seems to be their strategy. And there is no bigger target of theirs than Julian Lewis.
Eli, Alabama, despite what has been a rough start after a great win against Georgia, I saw a note. I think you say they're number one right now when it comes to who they are as a class. Have you seen any cracks in the armor of Kalen DeBoer in the 2025 Alabama class?
I don't think so. And that's where, for one, Kalen DeBoer and Courtney Morgan, the general manager they've got at Alabama with him, came from Washington. They're selling, obviously, a long-term picture, and they're selling Alabama to really, easy things to sell in a lot of ways. So I think these midseason blips, to this point probably haven't hurt them, and they are still, engaged in some really tight battles. But I think the Alabama of it all is what they can still sell and should have people running. However, if this really, becomes that, maybe we'll look back on it if they lose a few more games ultimately as, that tough first year for Kalen DeBoer. But that would be the case. If maybe in this next month they really fell off the tracks, I don't see that happening. That's where it could have an impact on their class. But I think right now they're pretty well positioned to hang on to their guys and finish, if not number one, with another top three class.
Is Hugh Freeze going to be able to hang on to all these guys he's got in this class, given how bad the season has gone for Auburn?
That's perhaps a better question. And I think, the fact is they don't have a lot of guys who at least publicly right now are engaged in, major, going on a ton of visits, going elsewhere. They've kept the guys that they got over the summer. They had a scorching summer. They've kept them, pretty close to wraps. And I think, the one thing we know Hugh Freeze can do is recruit. And obviously they've kind of gotten organized there, I think, compared to years past in terms of NIL, and they've worked really hard this year to secure some pretty, impressive commitments. I think that is one, though, that you watch and you think, if they slide all the way, to the end of the season, and some of those other bigger programs around Auburn in the SEC and elsewhere may start swimming around that class. And I think that is one to watch over the final month and a half of the cycle, particularly given if things just kind of peter out even further for Auburn.
What do you think about the position that Oklahoma finds itself in currently, not only with the struggles on the field, but do you think that has translated off the field, or that's something that they also have to concern themselves with in terms of just the recruiting bigger picture?
Yeah, I think that staff is always going to recruit well. They've got, a strong class. I don't know if it's going to end up top 10, and they may well lose a guy or two over the next month, but I think the face there is that Brent Venables, and he said it this week, he's recruiting guys who want to come play at Oklahoma, not guys committing for, to one coach. For instance, Seth Luttrell, obviously fired on Sunday. But I think, you think long term there, and I do think you start to wonder just, what does it look like? The recruiting end, I think they'll be all right, but you think about the back half of this season and Jackson Arnold now back under center, and what can they really achieve with the schedule they've got, and clearly how dire of a situation it is on offense. I think, specifically at quarterback, you might say the best case scenario for them now at this point would be to somehow finish the season knowing that Jackson Arnold is the guy. And he may have the talent to do that, but I think in this offense, the status of their offensive line, the lack of health at wide receiver, around all that, the way the running game is not picked up, it's going to be really hard for really either quarterback, Jackson Arnold or Michael Hawkins, to make that case. I think that sends them into the offseason when you consider the portal and rebuilding for next year in a pretty precarious spot.
There's two teams, BYU and Iowa State in the Big 12, who are unbeaten and playing very well, although they both escaped a lot last week. Your thoughts, Eli, of how does the Big 12, or what do they need to do to get two teams in the college football playoff, and do you think they will?
I think it's going to be difficult. But I think it probably starts with those two teams getting to that title game, right? With no losses or at most one loss each, and then the math kind of working out, and probably a lot of things going right around them. Because I think for all the SEC biases that are out there and the public posturing from Greg Sankey, I think the SEC is probably going to be working on 3, 4, 5 teams in there. The Big Ten probably, at minimum of 2, but I think I'd feel pretty good about Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State right now. And you're going to have, I think the ACC's got a few contenders. I think the group of 5, the Big 12 should be concerned about getting 2 teams in. It should also probably be concerned lightly. I think it still would have to go right for this to work, let's say for Boise State, but I think that group of 5 team could be pushing on the Big 12 even for those, those top 4 spots. And so I think the Big 12's probably still got its work cut out for it, but this is about as good a scenario I think as you could have with these two teams unbeaten at this point, and really, maybe they'll get in their own way, but in position to, get through the rest of the season, the regular season, to the title game unbeaten. That would be huge for the conference.
Let's say that there's 2 11-1 teams in the Big 12, and say Clemson and Miami come out of that championship game in some form or fashion in a spot to take playoff spots. Which conference do you think gets 2 in that scenario?
I fear, there's the reputation, and then there's, what we see this year. I think in that scenario, you'd probably wind up with the ACC getting the nod, right or wrong. But that's, again, where these, the BYU and Iowa State, and even from there, Kansas State, they probably don't not only need to win, but probably need to get some style points over the next 5, 6, 7 weeks into the playoff. And same can absolutely be said for everyone in the ACC, maybe outside of Miami, who I think a lot of people are sold on even for the bits and pieces, especially defensively, that look a little rickety. But I think, fair or not, if the Big 12 and maybe those programs that, Iowa State and BYU are not nationally viewed in that prestige range, probably have to do some extra work. They're going to get 2 teams in, and that's, what's out there for them up ahead. Their schedules are relatively light, but I think, I don't know that Iowa State and BYU can get away with the games they had the past few weeks, even if they continue to win them, and hope that that's going to get them 2 teams and give them that edge if it is kind of a narrow finish for the playoffs.
Game that got so many eyeballs, 12+ million, peaked, I think, at 14, Georgia, Texas, at Austin. Have you ever seen anything like what we saw? Fans have done some stupid things before, throwing things in the field. Tennessee did against Ole Miss in 21 or so. But just the turn of the events, the drama, and how all that went down?
No, I mean, like you said, we've seen crazy stuff. We've seen fans throwing stuff on the field. What we haven't seen is a call, and I think we can all agree, a bad call getting made, and then 7 minutes later, after a bunch of stuff is thrown on the field, and as the play is getting played on the Jumbotron, of course, we don't know exactly how the referees, really made that decision, but Georgia had a right to be really upset. I guess the good news is that the right call ultimately got made, and I guess really ultimately didn't impact the outcome of that game, but that was I've never seen anything like that, and I think that could have posed or does pose a big problem just in terms of an officiating standpoint of, spending those 7 minutes and finding a way to overturn it after a coach lobbies and the whole thing. I think they somehow averted disaster, even in the case where it was such a blown up thing to begin with.
Eli, keep doing the work you're doing, man. We appreciate it. You were in Oklahoma and covered those schools, and including Oklahoma State. What do you see? They're playing Baylor this week. They played well last week, but they couldn't finish. The quarterback situation's a mess. Rangel's hurt. Bowman's back. We know the story, but how much do you think this is grinding on Mike Gundy and also Cowboys fans?
Oh, I think it's supremely disappointing. This really is, right? Like, this is the Oklahoma State we've come to know and love, I think, in that, you've got the year, like last year, let's say, where you don't have high expectations for them and they surprise everyone. And then they come back this year with much of the same team. They're significantly depleted on defense, and that's really hamstrung them. But they come back with this team with high hopes, and we all probably would have thought at this point in the year they might be one of those 2 or 3 teams in the Big 12 competing for playoff spots. And yet here they are stumbling into Baylor. And I think week to week, even trying to predict what they're going to look like is really challenging. Maybe the more positive news, it's not positive, of course, the injuries they've got at quarterback. But the fact is, I think they've really only got one option this week, and it's going to be Alan Bowman, given the injuries behind him. So for them, I think they'd hope they go in and look a bit better, more consistent, as they did at points against BYU. But they are really a trick-or-treat team, which, I guess orange and black makes sense for this time of year.
Well, yeah, no, it does. What do you think this is doing to Gundy?
I think he's frustrated. I mean, which is an understatement, of course, but I think they were ready to move on with Garrett Rangel and whatever that was going to look like for the rest of this year. I mean, you could say, I guess at this point, whether it's a lost season or, at least a drop down from the initial aspirations they would have had, but perhaps you could develop Garrett Rangel. To lose him to a broken collarbone, have to go back to Alan Bowman, who, I think Mike Gundy had been frustrated with the performances of Alan Bowman. And then now, you're burning these last 6-7 games on a guy that, is not going to be back next year. So there's not a developmental angle there. So I think there's frustration specifically at the quarterback position. And then on the whole, this is a year that hasn't gone to plan, and they don't have an especially strong recruiting class coming in next year. We know, Oklahoma State's trying to get more competitive in the NIL space and working in the portal. But I think, what's got to be frustrating is that on top of the performance this year, looking toward next year, there's not a lot to be excited about just right now.
Where do Cowboys or Oklahoma State fans, they're not greedy, but they expect, because Gundy's won all the time. Where do you think they are? He's not going anywhere, and they're not forcing him out. Where do you think they are right now?
I think, right or wrong, and I really don't know the right answer to this, is they're focused on Casey Dunn, offensive coordinator, right? I mean, the frustrations with him have range back to, you mentioned I covered Oklahoma State, the 2021 season when they went to the Big 12 title game and lost to Baylor and just narrowly missed out on the playoff. Folks were upset then about the offense, and the offense is good back then. It isn't right now, and I think that's where a lot of the fans have their attention. Same for Brian Nardo, the defensive coordinator. I think to his credit, this has been a defense that's just been decimated by injury and all that. But I think that's where people's eyes are fixed, and I do think Mike Gundy has the benefit of the doubt in Stillwater, maybe for life. He's got a contract for life. But I think that's where a lot of the fan base's focus is right now.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, Eli, thank you. Appreciate your time. Great stuff. Eli Letterman covered Oklahoma State for a while, now works for ESPN, back-to-back ESPN. Max Olsson, Eli Letterman with us on 365 Sports. When we come back, Craig Smoak off the radar. We will look at the Big 12 Four Corners pod at the top of the 5 o'clock hour, plus more. Garrett Ross and Emery Winter running the mothership. Don't forget, if you haven't, please hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to this particular channel, we would appreciate that. 365 Sports. This, in just a moment, Craig Smoak and Off the Radar. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Marcos.com with so many different options for you to buy pizza and do it the way you want to do it. Whatever you want, regular crust or thick crust, or you want thin crust. I'm a thin crust dude. If you want a bunch of meat on it, they have a meat lovers type of pizza. If you want all vegetables or something like that, that's fine too. They do have that or a combination of that. I was in the pizza business as a delivery driver, and I remember learning how to make the pizzas back when I was at the end of my high school career and for 2 or 3 summers in college to make some money. So I always have had kind of fondness for anybody that has a pizza company. Knew some guys that owned it. My oldest brother, Robert, in fact, one time ran a pizza a business in New Mexico. It was part of a different brand. Bob Mock has been a part of the pizza business for a long, long time. He's been through other stores and watched what they've done, learned from them, and then also put in his own unique ideas for how he runs 5 Marco's stores here in Central Texas. In Belmead, China Spring, Hewitt, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
Welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports, segment on Tuesdays and Thursdays at some point in time around 5 o'clock, where we take a look at a grab bag of stories from around the sports world, and we'll get right into it and talk some college football TV ratings, not the whole gamut of things that we saw from this past weekend, but a little bit of additional detail. I mentioned the other day on Tuesday in this segment that Georgia and Texas and Alabama and Tennessee's ratings had come out, and the two combined for nearly 23.5 million viewers between the two games. Georgia, Texas, 13.19 million on ABC. Alabama, Tennessee, 10.23 million on ABC. So between their 3:30 and 7:30 broadcasts back-to-back, well over 23 million people watching those two football games. So a pretty nice feather in the cap for ABC, but they weren't done there. All the rest of the ratings have come out. They also had the third most watched game of the weekend as Miami and Louisville drew in 4.07 million. So ABC from 12 o'clock to the 3:30 to the 7:30 game, posting the 1, 2, and 3 highest ranked games ratings-wise on network television. So their investment in college football is seemingly paying off pretty heavily right now. Meanwhile, Fox, their highest rated game, Nebraska, Indiana, was the fourth most watched, 3.18 million for that one. And then the highest watched CBS game was the fifth most watched game overall. Michigan, Illinois at 3:30 was a little over 3 million, 3.01 million. So Georgia, Texas, 13 plus, Alabama, Tennessee, 10 plus, and then a scattering of others to round out that top five. But those two top games, I mean, my gosh, the PR stuff from the TV networks can get a little goofy, like honestly. But, I mean, how would you not be bragging about monstrous numbers like that if you're ABC, ESPN? Yeah. I mean, that's ridiculous. Their top game, that 13.19 for Georgia, Texas, is as much as the third most watched, the fourth most watched, the fifth most watched, and I think you could even throw in the sixth most watched all combined.
Right.
Did not reach, or were right around just the Georgia-Texas game alone. So that's pretty insane.
The fans can, it's a bragging point, and we've seen that really in recent last 3 to 4 years with realignment, but freaking sponsors are thrilled, man. The networks are thrilled, but the sponsors of ABC, ESPN, and those who put a lot of money up and probably had to pay more than they have in a long, long time, they're getting their returns too. And that for them, we have advertising on the show, man. There's nothing better than ROI, and they're getting that.
Yeah, they are. So just interesting to see huge numbers like that. Ohio State, Oregon was the big winner the previous week, so that NBC got to wear the gold medal that week. But, yeah, ABC with the top 3 broadcasts and the top broadcast averaging as much as the 4th through 7th place combined. That's pretty crazy. Meanwhile, the top watched Big 12 game, Colorado at Arizona, pulled in 2.02 million over on Fox. That was followed by Oklahoma State and BYU, which pulled in 1.66 million over on ESPN. And so that would have been the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 8th and 9th most watched games of the weekend were the two highest rated Big 12 games, with Colorado barely pulling in over 2 million for a blowout loss over Arizona. And this is where, like, the TV rating stuff.
When did that game kick off? At 9:15? Yeah, I think it did. That's kind of late.
Yeah, it was a late kickoff. This is Colorado, Arizona. That was an afternoon game. That was a afternoon. That was 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So, anyways, I bring up the TV ratings, and I've never done it to get into all of the weeds and break down quarterly hours and do like basically wrestling fandom has become over the last 20 years, where you got to compare the shows and get this got this. I don't want to do that because it's actually taken away from my fandom of wrestling, and it's starting to get that way, as I predicted a couple years ago with college football, because so many are enamored with TV deals now and what it means for realignment. And so I understand all of it, but point being, a great example here is the article that came out, or the write-up that came out, the worst ratings for Coach Prime since they've taken over over the last year. The 2.02 million on Fox, the least watched Colorado game, according to Sports Media Watch, on broadcast TV in the Deion Sanders era. Only one Deion era Buffaloes game has averaged fewer viewers, which was a Friday night game against Washington State on FS1 last season. And it actually, on Sports Media Watch, gets into the details. And if you want to get into who else was on at the same time, you can have all your fun with that. But this is the type of stuff that gets created, especially when you get so into the TV ratings. But what do you think? What do you think's the reason for Colorado's, I guess, drop? Is it as simple as just who they were going up against? Is it lessening interest? Does the Big 12 have a ratings problem? Like, what do you chalk that up to?
I chalk it up to the fact it was 9:15. I mean, like,
but Craig's saying it was an afternoon game. I thought that was a night game, but I guess it was an afternoon game.
Well, yeah, I think it's who they're playing. I think also, until they really do something, until Colorado really does something, and they're winning games, but until they really do something, then there's going to be a little bit of a drop off, because as great as Travis Hunter is, and he didn't play in most of that game. Or all, I'm not sure, because he was out. He played a little bit. Yeah, but he played for a little bit, and then he was out of the game. So that's a Heisman candidate that's out. Shadur is great, but what else is going on in that game that would make people want to watch? And what else is going on at the same time? So yeah, I don't think it's like everything is a reason for panic nowadays if something drops. But put them on at a 7 Eastern kick. In a big moment, then they're going to get ratings, because that's how it works.
There might be. I don't think Travis Hunter going out would affect like hundreds of thousands of people clicking their television off, but I do think that there's a little bit of the newness is worn off. It's not that the sparkle is worn off. They still have all the bells and the whistles, but I think there's a little bit of that. Arizona's not very good. They won 34-7. One of the reasons why Georgia, Texas not only had big numbers, but big numbers, because the game, even though at one point Georgia looked like they were about to pop it open, it was competitive, and it was at night. And a night game usually is going to get better ratings than 11 o'clock or a 2:30 type of start.
Yeah, and I wasn't just saying that it kicked off early. It was a 3 o'clock kickoff.
Start, yep.
That was not a night game. So they had the particular day matchups that maybe affected that. I do think having a blowout, Arizona's not a super interesting team. That could affect it as well, but that's also why I talk about, I'm not going to start getting into the weeds where I'm watching the game and I get bummed. Like, well, what about the TV rating and, all of that kind of jazz? But it does matter to some extent, big picture. So if you are somebody that gets into that, just notable that Colorado had their least watched game, and it could be for a variety of factors, the competition elsewhere, also the competition on the field or lack thereof in a blowout loss like that. But just something to mention because Sports Media Watch felt the need to, and so something to monitor. If that becomes a trend, that would be problematic to some extent, because who is drawing eyeballs for you? I mean, that's the thing you have to worry about if you're the Big 12. So that's why every single panic button that gets pushed over the future of this conference or whatever, my answer to all of it, whether it's NIL or it's TV ratings or TV packages or whatever, is just keep winning freaking football games. That's why we're here in the first place, and that's what matters at the end of the day, and all the rest of it will fall as it may. But unless you're winning football games or you're somebody who's got 100 years of built-in history, those are about the only ways you're going to
listen, I agree. There's no
or you have some stars, and the problem is Arizona's stars are not playing like stars. They're not interesting this year like they were last year. Colorado is interesting, but we'll see if that trend continues for them. So just wanted to make mention of that there.
One of the things the Big Ten has, other than, yes, Ohio State's fantastic, Michigan made their run in the last 3 years or so, they have big, large alumni bases and also 100 years or so of tradition. And that's what makes, that's why CBS, I guess, made the decision. Although it looks like, obviously, ABC and ESPN are having a great run. They have schools that have been in existence forever. What the SEC has is some of those same type of schools, but a almost familiar type environment, that they're all like the same families, but yet they hate each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. I mean, there's big fan bases, and that's not something that you can just grow overnight or you can spend money to create. Again, so my answer, my all-over solution is just keep winning football games. And look, if undefeated BYU versus undefeated Iowa State in the Big 12 title game doesn't pop a big number, then I understand why that would be reason for concern. But ultimately, I'm a college football fan, so I just want to see that. I don't care how many people are watching it, but I do appreciate those who dig into that stuff. And if there is an alarming trend, then I'm sure that will be identified. But this is at least something to just asterisk next to with Colorado and say, all right, let's see if that continues or if they keep winning and the numbers start to pop again for them. But they are one of the bigger, have been the bigger rating draws for the Big 12 in their short stint thus far. So massive weekend for ABC and the SEC with $23+ million for the top 2 games combined back-to-back on Saturday. All right, meanwhile, you got the NFL tonight, but big news. We were talking a little bit, just mentioning BYU in passing, but former BYU star wide receiver Puka Nacua has been activated from injured reserve by the LA Rams as they get set to play the Vikings tonight. It hasn't been decided on whether or not he's going to play, but they are at least going to see how he does in pregame warm-ups per Adam Schefter. So Nacua coming back from a sprained PCL at the very beginning of the season. He's missed 5 games, and that was something he had already been dealing with from the summertime as well. So he's back. Perhaps. We'll see. We'll see if he's back after pregame warm-ups. But Cooper Kupp also expected to be coming back as well. So
is he not getting traded, or is that off the
Well, that's
table?
the rumors, is
Paul?
that
Yeah,
he's available. That's Twitter talking.
No, I think it's true. I mean,
yeah.
I think it's true. The Rams know where they're kind of headed, and Les Snead is always
where are they headed?
They're not going anywhere this year. You know, they need to build up draft capital and move on to the next thing. Matthew Stafford's not getting any younger. He's fought through a lot of injuries the last couple of years. They need to get ready to move on. Les Snead is very smart about these things. He's one of the better GMs in football. Knows when to go all in and when to fold, and not by folding, but say, okay, let's get something for Cooper Kupp while we can. Let's make these moves. So not surprised. I have a question for you guys. One of my 3 fantasy football teams, I drafted Puka Nacua on, and I named it the Puka Shells, like the Puka Shell necklace. Now that he's back in, do I have to play him because my team's named after him?
You can't have a name. I mean, it's like if this was Catalina Sports and you weren't a part of it.
My other team, one of my other teams is called Everything Hurts, and that's because I have Jalen Hurts.
Right.
And then my third team is called London Calling because of Drake London.
Nice.
So
he's
very punny.
He's not bad. He's done well for Atlanta.
So,
very punny.
Yeah.
I would say if you name a team after a guy, you probably should play him. Yeah, I think that if he's available, that is, because like I said, they're going to see how he does in pregame warm-ups and figure out whether or not he's good enough to go. But, yeah, I would play him if he's available as the Rams get ready to host the Vikings tonight. It's a 7:15 kick on Prime Video. Rams are 2-4, so that's part of the reason why they're starting to unload, potentially some players like Cooper Kupp, and the Vikings off to a great start at 5-1. So we'll see what shakes down there. But speaking of wide receivers and Cooper Kupp and being on the trading block, there's a lot of rumors flying around, and one of the rumors flying around was that Cooper Kupp was actually talked about by the Kansas City Chiefs as perhaps a target and a potential acquisition, although that apparently lost some steam as they went and picked up DeAndre Hopkins. But they were at least talking somewhat about Cooper Kupp, according to Diana Rossini, and that the Chiefs and Rams had discussed a deal, but that it just didn't occur because Kansas City was not interested in giving away one of their higher draft picks. And they also did not want to eat all of the salary. So KC wanted basically everything and without giving up anything, sounds like, that was worthwhile. So instead, they settled for a veteran target in DeAndre Hopkins, who, based on the reaction of social media, you'd think that this man was still like the number 1 receiver in football or right there in that conversation. That's not necessarily the case, but your thoughts on the Chiefs and, making it official with DeAndre Hopkins?
I think that even though he's not still the DeAndre Hopkins we saw in Houston or early in his days in Arizona, I think, Patrick Mahomes, the only 2 quarterbacks who've made Juju Smith-Schuster good are Ben Roethlisberger towards the end of his career and Patrick Mahomes. So Hall of Famers, all right? He's made guys, Marquez Valdez-Scantling was not really great a lot of other places, except he was valuable to the Chiefs for a couple years. DeAndre Hopkins better than all those guys.
Was Scantling with Rodgers and Green Bay?
Yeah. But, they have all these guys that they bring in. DeAndre Hopkins for what they want him to do and what Mahomes can make him do, it's a great pickup. It's a fantastic pickup for them. Now, yeah, they're not tied to him for very long. They've had, Rashee Rice out for the year. They've got other things. It's going to be good for Xavier Worthy and all that. So, yeah, I think it's a great move.
He's caught 14 passes this year.
Xavier Worthy. Well, they're not.
No. I'm talking about Hopkins. 14 catches for maybe 150 yards and a touchdown.
Who's his quarterback? Who's his quarterback? The statistically worst quarterback in the league now.
Romo did that with a few guys early on. What was the Robinson kid that got a big contract
so
out of it?
They have that. I think it's going to be great. I think it'll be fine. They've made it work.
He
with
doesn't throw anything more than 4 yards down over the past the line of scrimmage anyway. But
it doesn't matter when the opposing team always throws up on themselves anytime they play the Chiefs.
But no, I think it's a nice addition.
I'm not kidding. They do.
Yeah.
I mean, watch the games. Teams do stupid stuff against Kansas City that Kansas City doesn't do, and the Kansas City wins basically every game because they don't make the big dumb mistakes in crunch time that seemingly everybody else that they play does. It's why they're good. Is they don't hurt themselves hardly, if at all. And when they do, they have the greatest player in the world who's able to overcome some of those things, whether self-inflicted or whether injuries. So Chiefs and DeAndre Hopkins will take on their arch rival Raiders coming up this weekend, who are 2-5, and KC will look to stay unbeaten. But yeah, I guess now all eyes are on Cooper Kupp, right? I actually saw the Commanders mentioned as a potential target for Cooper Kupp.
That would be excellent if he could be there and be healthy.
Yeah, but they're one of a few that would obviously be interested in his services. Meanwhile, not only do you have the NFL.
When was the last time the Commanders in the middle of the year even were in a position to care whether they made a trade?
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been a while. So not only do you have the NFL game tonight, Rams and Vikings, but also a couple college football games as well. We mentioned very briefly in passing the Liberty loss last night. They fell to Kennesaw State, who was previously winless but is now 1-6 and beat the unbeaten Liberty Flames, knocking them out of the entire playoff discussion. Not that they were really all that involved. I don't follow Liberty closely, so I don't know what the hell's happened in the last year, but they were still winning games. But like Caden Salter went from being a guy on a weekly list statistically every single week to the point it like kind of felt gimmicky to like not even being on a single one this entire year. It's very bizarre how his production has flipped. But anybody worried about Liberty scheduling their way into the postseason, have no fears after last night's game. Tonight, meanwhile, Georgia Southern's at Old Dominion. That's at 6 o'clock on ESPN2. Georgia Southern 5-2, Old Dominion, the host 3-4. So a little action there. But the big game tonight, and the one that I'm very interested in, is in the ACC, as number 19 Pittsburgh, unbeaten, is at home taking on 5-1 Syracuse. Syracuse 2-1 in the ACC. Pitt 2-0 in the ACC. Pitt 4-point favorites as I last looked, and pretty much the favorites in all the metrics that I've seen. But yeah, this ought to be a dandy later on tonight. 6-0 versus 5-1. Pitt and Syracuse on ESPN.
We saw Narduzzi when he was at Michigan State, right? The Cotton Bowl. And then, of course, we know Fran Brown. So we kind of not know these guys. We know Fran Brown. I thought what yesterday Zach Gelb was talking about, how Fran had to grow up and mature, and now he's in that position. He's done really well. And, I mean, Pittsburgh's found a way to win a couple of games. This is a fun game. Are these two teams going to play Clemson, Miami? Who?
Pitt does. That's the thing, though. Like, Pitt does. I think Syracuse plays Miami. Syracuse is already kind of behind it because they've got some losses, but they need help. But yeah, the league's so big that you're going to have some log jams at the top, or some teams that can get there. And look, it happened already in the ACC last year. Louisville got all the way through the year and didn't play Florida State, Clemson, or Miami last year until they got to the championship game and played FSU. So,
well, yeah, Syracuse has one loss, and it's to Stanford, which is a bad loss.
Yeah.
That was early in the year, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a big game. I mean, Syracuse has the one loss, as you mentioned, but they've got Pitt tonight in a big one, and then they've got a relatively easy schedule, although BC, Virginia Tech maybe could make it interesting. They do have Miami at the end of the year, though, so that's what's awaiting Syracuse. A lot of that doesn't matter if they don't win tonight, though. Yep. I mean, it doesn't matter to our purposes at all. Meanwhile, Pitt has SMU in a couple weeks, Clemson in a month, so they still are going to have a couple of tests regardless of whether they win tonight or not, but that is definitely the crown jewel of the couple of college football games tonight. Meanwhile, final thing here, you got a couple football options. Tomorrow you'll have baseball back as an option, as well as the World Series will get underway. The dream matchup for Major League Baseball, the Dodgers and the Yankees, game one tomorrow at Dodger Stadium, and the ticket prices, as you can imagine, are getting up there, getting pretty high at this point, over $1,000. The going average for tickets, $1,500, a little more than that, is just the price at this point for standing room only tickets. So if you want to just go to the stadium, that's for Game 3 at Yankee Stadium. If you are in New York and you want to go to Game 3, your only options at this point basically are $1,500 standing room only tickets. So it's like the Cowboys fans, except for they're not paying $1,500 to stand around at AT&T Stadium, but that's what you fork over just to be there. Yeah. And you know what? A lot of people will do that. I guarantee a lot of people will pay $1,500 just to be there for that. But as far as tomorrow night in the opener, the average resale ticket for Game 1 Dodger Stadium, $1,700+ was pretty much the average across the three major ticketing sites. So the most expensive World Series tickets on record already for Dodgers and Yankees.
Well, you two massive names. What's crazy about these two franchises that have World Series, especially the Yankees, what do they have, like 28 or so? They have not played each other in the World Series since 1981. It's been 43 years since the last time. Yankees have an 8-3 advantage all time in the Fall Classic. The last time they played each other in the World Series, I thought there might have been another year or two, was in 1981. That's a long, long time ago. Is Dodger Stadium, has it been renovated at all? Been tweaked a little bit? But, you know, Yankee Stadium's brand. The reason I bring that up is just it's one of the few still relics, I guess you could say.
They haven't. It's like Fenway or Wrigley Field where they keep it up, but it still has its original charm.
Yeah.
Dodger Stadium is one of my favorite places to go. It's one of the hardest stadiums to get to.
Oh, no, we've been
because
there.
of L.A. But, yeah, I love Dodger Stadium.
Well, this isn't a sign of, already it being the highest selling tickets and whatnot, but the sales revenue by Tuesday morning, so that was 2 days ago, the sales revenue, according to StubHub, was already surpassing the final sales revenue from the entire World Series between the Diamondbacks and Rangers last year. So that was 3 days before Game 1 even started. They were already setting that mark. So, yeah, a massive ticket seller is Dodgers-Yankees, as you might imagine. Will probably translate to the TV ratings as well. Yeah, this is going to be a big one. Somebody's either going to win their 28th World Series, or in the case of the Yankees, or in the case of the Dodgers, win their 8th World Series, and you've got stars all over the place. And that'll bring me to my final note, which is about a former star and is related to the Dodgers, as Fernando Valenzuela passed away earlier this week at age 63. We did not get around to talking about that because it occurred after this segment on Tuesday, and we didn't mention it yesterday. But the Rookie of the Year in 1981, also won the Cy Young that year, won the World Series that year. It was the year of Fernando. Huh?
They played the Yankees that year.
Yeah,
too.
They played the Yankees. It was a year of Fernando Mania. So
absolutely.
He passes away at age 63. El Toro, an illustrious career, long time in the major leagues, and he was working with the Dodgers, working up in the booth, but his health issues had started to take a turn, and he had to walk away from that, according to the Dodgers, back in early October. So you kind of saw that some things were not going well, but a lot of celebrations for him. I'm sure there will be some stuff, obviously, during this series as well, and MLB is going to be honoring him in some capacity as the World Series gets underway on Friday. So any memories of, I was too young, Fernando Mania, any thoughts on the passing of Fernando Valenzuela?
Had the big high kick, and he looked straight up to the sky.
He was my father. Used to just walk around the house saying, baseball been very, very good to me all the time. And when I went to Dodger Stadium, the game I went to was I wish my dad had been there because it was one, Anson Williams Potsy from Happy Days sang the national anthem, which was trippy because he just killed it. It was amazing. He has a beautiful voice. Potsy can sing, guys. I do not know about Ralph Mouth, but Potsy can for sure sing. And two, it was Fernando Valenzuela Day, and so he was there doing things. I tried to go and get a picture, but what am I really going to do? Like, how can I get close to Fernando Valenzuela on Fernando Valenzuela Day? And so they were honoring him, but outside of the stadium, they had a special Dodgers T-shirt booth, and I bought my dad a Fernando T-shirt, which he wore religiously. He loved it, and he was a Rangers fan. He just loved Fernando Valenzuela. Yeah. He loved the way that he pitched. I one of the things I remember about him was he was so famous. They mentioned him in Bull Durham, that he breathed at his eyelids because he was a Mayan Indian, all those things. And he was such a big part of the game, especially for Mexican fans, because he was their guy and he had kind of broken through and was the most famous, was fantastic. Not a Hall of Famer, but he's in the Hall of Awesome for sure.
He's in Baseball Hall of Fame.
He is? Okay.
Yeah, he was inducted in 2014. He's 173 and 153, but 6-time All-Star consecutively, World Series champion, won the Cy Young, won Rookie of the Year, won a Gold Glove.
He's not in the Hall of Fame. I don't think he is. I think he was nominated, but I don't think he's actually in the Hall of Fame because the whole thing about them retiring his number last year was that they only honor Hall of Fame members as far as the Dodgers organization goes, but they made an exception for him, and they did it a year ago, actually. So
he's the member of the Mexican professional baseball.
Slight difference,
That on his Wikipedia page, it said Baseball Hall of Fame. I didn't look above that line because his record was not Hall of Fame worthy, even though he had a bunch of pretty nice awards. But I just remember him, great player.
He was in the Hall time. He was in the Hall of Awesome.
He looked up, high kick, looked up to the sky almost every time he pitched.
Yeah, so the Dodgers have to feel pretty good about that decision to retire him despite not being a Hall of Famer, which is typically their guidelines. And that was a moment they got to have a year ago, and now fast forward a year later, and he had to step down from the booth and passes, but they're going to have a pretty big atmosphere to honor him beginning tomorrow night, and I'd imagine throughout this series as well. So Dodgers-Yankees beginning on Friday, and there's a few things off the radar.
Thank you. One other note about Dodger Stadium. Between 2003 and 2005, it was upgraded with a lot of LED video displays, and then in 2008, they had a $400 million project to build a museum and shops around it. But inside, it is still like going back to the 1960s or 70s. The way the concourses are still very tight. It's a beautiful place, though. I'll never forget my greatest memory at Dodger Stadium. We went to games there when we covered the Cowboys. Was Super Bowl 27. Cowboys and Bills, media day was at Dodger Stadium, and I was able, on media day, to sit in the seat in the bleachers in the outfield right next to Troy Aikman and get an interview, and it was on the front page of USA Today, the picture of the microphone of KTBB Radio in Tyler. Thank you, Craig. Great stuff. Appreciate your time. When we come back, we'll have Mickey Spagnola. We have the Four Corners Big 12 pod and Paul's Top 5, and this is 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe, heavy-duty equipment. You build things. If you do, you go to where they are, which is on the east side of I-35, and that's Loop 340 and Highway 6 in Waco. Pipe, steel, and metal. Pipe, steel, and metal. And if it's commercial or real estate, if you're building something, you have a ranch and you're building kind of an entrance and you need something for that, they have that too. That's what they do, and they have since 1943. Pioneer Steel and Pipe since 1943, with all the changes, the ups and downs of the economy, whatever is technology or whatever is new, and they always were able to stay up with all of that. And now with their beautiful location, they opened up in December of 2022. They have more room, more places for you to load up what you buy and take it to the construction site, whether you have a pickup truck for something smaller or an 18-wheeler for something much larger. It's pioneerboys.com.
When it comes to me and my money,
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Bambi SQ, what is the number one reason or two or three reasons, Bambi, that people should contact House of Travel?
As a travel agency local here in Waco, we can take care of all your bookings, your payments, answer your questions, help you when there are issues or problems, things that may come up that you don't know what to do or how to fix them. People don't realize we don't charge a fee for what we do. It doesn't cost you extra to use a travel agent. We're just here. We get paid by the tour companies and the cruise lines to represent them. But you have an expert on your side that's here and local, and you have a name and a face to put together to help you with anything that you may need. Give us a call. We can price things for you. We can help you answer questions. We can make it simple, easy, and one stop.
Your knowledge of all the years you've done this and then spit it back to them or give them options?
It helps us to kind of know a date range, a budget, what your goals are and what you want to see and do on your vacation. And then that helps us to know what to look for, and we can narrow down and help you make the best choices for your vacation so you get the best value. You get exactly what you were hoping for, and making sure that it's taken care of with a carefree, easy, simple for you type vacation. I've been doing this for over 40 years. Every day I learn something new. I experience new situations and things that I can help take care of for people, whether it's just making sure you get the best deals and find the best vacations, or whether it's to solve that problem like you've got a flight that's being canceled and you don't know what to do. There's weather coming up. Should I cancel my trip next week because of the hurricane? Those are things that we take care of and you don't have to worry about. You've got somebody that you can rely on that you know is an expert, knows what we're doing, have been doing this for a long time, so that you're not questioning, okay, does the person on the other end of the phone really understand what I'm asking or know how to find those deals? You've got an expert, and we are here to take care of that.
For more information, go to houseoftravelwaco.com. Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don's Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
Here we go, 365 Sports, and it is our fourth pod of the week. Every week, Monday through Thursday, barring something else, we go through four different sections of the Big 12. The North, the South, the Bullsby pod, and then this one here, which is the Four Corners. And that is, of course, the teams that have come in this particular year: Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State. Let's start with Dion and Colorado. The Buffaloes are 5-2 overall, a win away from being bowl eligible, and a lot of people would have lost money that would have said, no, they weren't going to get bowl eligible. I'm just saying there was a big chunk. They're 5-2. Paul Catalina, they're playing pretty well.
Yeah, they are, and especially after that Nebraska game where they got gutted. I mean, they were literally gutted in that game, and they've responded with vigor after that. This week, Cincinnati, who's been playing well, I think there's going to be some points scored in this game, but I think Colorado's just better in that they're doing things the right way. They've gotten better on defense, and they've gotten better enough on defense where their defense is consistent and is good and it gets stops, and they don't have to, get in these wild shootouts all the time. So because of that, I think Colorado wins the game against Cincinnati, although I do think Cincinnati will get a couple haymakers in there or something. But for the most part, what they're doing has been really, really good at Colorado outside of their complete lack of ability to run the football.
Colorado's playing really well. They had a couple, turnovers that you want to clean up, but beyond that, there was nothing that Arizona was doing that made that game much more than just a pretty simple, easy business trip. That was all Colorado. Arizona we'll get to in a moment, but they crushed them, and I didn't think that was going to be some great game, but I was curious of how Colorado's defense would play against Arizona's, two weapons in particular, and they shut them down. I mean, Fafita McMillan didn't do anything of real substance here. So it was an ugly loss for Zona. It was a nice win for Colorado, and now you're one win away from bowl eligibility. I think that I lean their way in terms of this Cincinnati matchup, but I'm very interested to see the Texas high school quarterback duel between Shedeur and Brennan Sorsby, a couple players who have had big years and come from the state of Texas. So interesting to watch them go back and forth, but I'd lean Colorado here. And I think this is going to be kind of a measuring stick to see just sort of where Cincinnati is in terms of they're 5-2, but I don't know that people are really latching on to them. But if you go beat Colorado, then I think you won't have a choice but not to. But I do think Colorado wins at home. It's another late night game. You figure that probably plays into their favor a little bit, but they're just slight favorites here. So I guess Vegas is anticipating a close one as well. But I still go Colorado, and I think they're in a good spot. And I think Travis Hunter's getting healthier, which is a good sign as well.
Kickoff at 9:15. I have enjoyed those late night. Now last week I got tired, man. I did. I couldn't watch the end of the day, but 9:15 the kickoff on ESPN. Now, let's go to Utah. I think Arizona State probably should be next, but we're going to go to Utah at Houston coming up Saturday. It's an ESPN Plus game, a 6 o'clock kick.
Try to come up with a worse football game to watch than Houston-Utah based on what we've seen from both of them at this point. I don't mean like these teams aren't worth – I mean, like, from somebody tuning in to, like, want to watch – like, is this the worst Big 12 matchup you could put together on paper?
Yeah, I think so.
For, like, just a pure football enjoyment.
Like this week?
Because even
in general.
It could have been a Baylor-Houston game later in the year.
You think Baylor-Houston would be worse than Utah?
No, I don't, because I think Baylor can score.
Yeah,
Utah can't score. Yeah. And Houston – I guess we'll see, depending on whatever game, how it goes. But Utah's defense is still pretty good. I mean, they only gave up 10 points last week. So I would assume this is very low scoring, very drab game. And if you look at all the other games in the Big 12, just with the matchups, there's not one I could see that would be like this. This has the risk to be another 10-7 game again. Back-to-back weeks.
13-7, actually.
13-7, sorry. 13-7 game again for Utah.
Yeah, I don't have high hopes for this one. Like I said, I think it's the ugliest football matchup on paper that you could put together if you had your share of two teams from the Big 12 because, Baylor went and hung 59 points last week. So, give me them over 7-point Utah, who wasn't playing a giant on defense. They were playing TCU. Mm-hmm. So that was a bad look, again, for the offense. Isaac Wilson's very much a freshman, still turning the ball over, still completing like half his passes. There's just not a lot to like there. And then the running game even wasn't able to scrounge together much at all. So it was a lot of bad on that side of the ball. And I don't really know how much that changes outside of just Keithy or Money Parks or whoever just like taking over a game somehow or another and, putting together some massive performance. Outside of that randomly happening, there's just not a lot to love about Utah's offense. Defensively, they're still, solid, but they are a team that's fallen hard and fast, and it's amounted to a lot of crow for some of their fans online that I'm sure is not very tasty because there was a lot of talk about how they were going to come run the Big 12. And I have seen this cute little thing that some Utah fans are doing to try and spin this of, before these losses, those weren't real Big 12 teams. Those were two former Pac-12 teams. And then they lose to TCU, and it's like, well, that's not really a real Big 12 team, I guess, either. And now Houston, that's an American. Then they play BYU. Oh, that's an American or an independent. Then they play Colorado. So Iowa State, in like 5 weeks from now, kick their ass, okay?
Yeah.
So that they don't have any more of these very obviously tongue-in-cheek, although for some you wonder, that's not really the real Big 12 as they continue to try to cope with the downslide of this season. I don't hate Utah the way it probably sounds, and I definitely don't try to poke on them the way it's very easy to do online now, but they did ask for a lot of that in the lead up to this season. So, things aren't going well. We know that Kyle Whittingham's trying to navigate as best he can, but this game is ugly. UGLY on paper. So we'll see. Utah should win this game. If they don't, then my gosh, like that's reaching a level of low that even with the injury to Cam Rising, you would never have suspected them dropping 4 straight potentially and losing to a team like Houston.
Utah fans are not delusional. They've had a nice run. But this year that run ended. And they're going through what happens in football. And they've taken advantage of teams when they had their nice run that had probably had injuries along the way. I respect the hell out of Coach Whittingham. I love the guy and how he coaches. But this year they have been average at best, period, no matter who the quarterback is or not. So whoever they lose to, the bottom line, it's a conference loss, even if they used to be from, my God, the Southwest Conference. All right, so there's Utah. We've done Colorado. And now the two schools in Arizona, including one that has been a fun story this year in Arizona State, Kenny Dillingham. And they're off this week.
Yeah, they're off this week, which is good. So that's another week for Sam Leavitt to get healthy. Hopefully that happens sooner rather than later for them, so that the Jeff Sims experience can be on the bench where it belongs, where they belong. Love Kenny Dillham's story, but since they're not playing anybody this week, I don't really have much more to say about that.
I got plenty. I mean, he had to come out and apologize this week for singling out his kicker, who missed 2 field goals down the stretch that would have made it a 1-score game. Wouldn't have tied it, wouldn't have taken the lead, but would have at least made it to where they were within a touchdown. And 2 times in the final 9 minutes when they had that opportunity to make it a 1-score game, they missed both kicks. And as a result, he comes out afterwards and basically begs for kicking tryouts and throws his kicking unit under the bus, well, in particular, one guy, in Ian Hershey, without saying his name. Said they want open tryouts, and if you're a student on campus, give them a ring and all that, and there's some that actually did. There's a whole write-up I read the other day on a kid who has been waiting for a phone call, or not a phone call, but waiting for an opportunity, has been, practicing kicking, and has been hoping to get a tryout chance. I'm not sure what that story amounted to because Kenny Dillingham came out and apologized for what he said. And said he shouldn't have focused and locked in on, a singular unit, or in this case, really a player.
Yeah.
Because the player missed the 2 field goals. So he apologized for that. I think that's a young coach. And just a coach in general, heat of the moment, you say something, and then you realize afterwards, damn, that was probably a little bit too harsh. It was humorous at the time for everybody not named Ian Hershey or on that kicking team, but that hurt him somewhat. Not having Sam Leavitt hurt him worse. Cincinnati... that was a game that Cincinnati got out big early, and still it remained a close enough game for Arizona State to feel like they had a chance, but I don't think anybody was really under the illusion that they were going to go win that after the Leavitt injury. So the result was the same. The kicking story, though, made that more of a headline loss than it otherwise would have been, but they're still sitting pretty at 5-2. They get to go lick their wounds, and with this being the second bye week, they'll play 5 straight games when they come back. And we'll see if they're able to get that one more win, and we'll see if Sam Leavitt's able to come back. But when they return, they'll be – and this is what's interesting, at Oklahoma State. So maybe that's win number 6. UCF at home, that's a possibility. At K-State, BYU at home, at Arizona. So you would figure that a couple of those are dicey, but there's enough there to get win number 6, and anything other than that would be awfully disappointing given how they started.
I agree. And I just like that they have been a fun story. That doesn't mean that they're satisfied, but they have been a really fun story. And you're right, Dillingham learned from that, although, he was being honest about the kicking game. It sucked. Cost him the game, perhaps. Arizona is at home against West Virginia. The Mountaineers, of course, are in a mess of a thing, and Arizona's not much better. It's going to be a 5 o'clock kick on FS1, and Arizona, of course, coming off what was just a very bad performance and got thumped by Colorado.
Yeah, both of them need a win in the worst way this week. They really do. On Arizona's end, I mean, I don't even know, what to think about this game and who can win it because they've both not been playing very well lately. So, let's put on the helmets and run into each other and see who's standing at the end. That's the only thing I can say about it because
you're so violent.
It's true. So yeah, I mean, but it's just how you have to. It's just how I look at it.
I mean, Arizona tried to gamble with the onside kick there early, and Colorado made them pay, and that was kind of a sign of if you convert that, then maybe you start the drums beating for an upset bid. But Colorado negated that right away, and this just wasn't all that interesting or particularly a close game. Arizona hung around for a little while. They just are so injury riddled in some cases, but also just the whole Fafita McMillan story of how good those guys are and can be, but how up and down their performances have been this season. And that was certainly the case against Colorado. I mean, there's Noah Fafita, a pick and a touchdown, but threw for like less than 150 yards, was throwing for like less than 4 yards per attempt. Just not good. And then, McMillan had a very quiet game, 38 yards, no scores. So Colorado shut down the biggest pieces of that Arizona offense, and that Arizona vibe right now with first-year head coach Brent Brennan isn't great. You've lost 3 straight. You've lost 4 out of your last 5. You don't seem to have a lot of answers. You don't have health on your side either, and yeah, it's just not a good look, and I don't know what to expect this weekend. That's 2 teams that are limping into this thing. I would lean West Virginia, but they're not feeling so hot either, so I don't know. But both teams desperately need this win, and Arizona just trying to snap out of this funk and give themselves some hopes for a postseason, but it's getting harder to see, especially if they lose this weekend.
Yeah, they had high hopes, of course, with the transition and much more, and they have been a disappointment. We're now joined. That's it. Is Paul anything else on Arizona?
No, he's there, yeah.
The Four Corners Big 12 pod. Next Monday, we will then get to, I think it's the Big 12. We start with the Big 12 North. We're now joined by Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. Cowboys in San Francisco. Mickey, this is going to test my theory. When they need a win, and it doesn't look like they should probably win against a team that looks like they're better, they will find a way to win.
Well, they certainly need for you to be right about that because, and when you look at this, David, both teams need a win, and they're both kind of in the same situation.
Absolutely.
When it comes to the injury problem and just the outlook for the rest of the season. So I'm not saying it's a pivotal game for one or the other if they should lose, but it sure would make you feel a lot better yourself, especially the Cowboys who basically no-showed against Detroit. At least, San Francisco was competitive in their past game, got beat, but they were competitive. The Cowboys, like I said, kind of no-showed against Detroit. And for kind of their state of mind, it would be huge if they can go on the road and beat a team that's beat them the last 3 times they've played.
Mickey, Deebo Samuel was back at practice for the 49ers today. He shook off pneumonia, which is, just the Cowboys' luck that they might get him, see him this week and when the 49ers need him. And on the Cowboys side, they've had a couple of unlucky injuries this week. And one is John Stevens Jr. I just feel bad for the guy who can't stay on the field, and we can see what he can do. But they do have some good news, right? Kalen Carson's back?
Well, he's back in practice. Now, he's practiced before and then didn't play. So that one, to me, it's a wait and see. I thought the best news this week so far from an injury standpoint was Eric Kendricks practicing on a limited basis. Last week, he didn't do much at all, or the last game, and he didn't play against Detroit. And that's a huge injury because I think the way he's performed so far this year, bang for the buck, he's probably one of the best free agent signings. And I mean in the league because he's not costing the Cowboys a whole heck of a lot. And he's playing like a guy that deserved a multi-year contract. So that was good news. Deron Bland continues to rehab. He's running awfully well. We'll see if he gets into practice on Saturday. That certainly would help. But I have my doubts on Micah Parsons. He's still doing rehab stuff, working on the resistant cords, but he hasn't gotten into practice yet. So I don't know that he makes it back. And, San Francisco's kind of in the same boat on offense. You mentioned Deebo getting back into practice. We'll see how much he gets done. They may be trying to get him to Sunday to be able to play the game, but I don't know how fast somebody recovers from having to go to the hospital with pneumonia and then actually play in a game. Maybe he can get in a few snaps, but their other wide receivers, they're without Ayuk. They've been without Jennings. So, yeah, they've been relying on a lot of young guys, and it doesn't look like McCaffrey's ready to get back. They got to bye next week, so they may be looking at that to give him an extra 2 weeks before he goes back. But Jordan Mason, second in the league in rushing with 667 yards, so it's not like they've lost anything from a rushing standpoint. Now, McCaffrey's a little bit more versatile running back and can incorporate him into the passing game. But as for running the ball, he's been able to pick up the slack.
Mickey, San Francisco is in more dire straits because they're 3-4, and this is a home game. Cowboys are 3-3,
right?
And they're coming off a bye, so that's almost like this has worked out well for them. Of course, San Francisco, though, has been their 800-pound gorilla. Honest question, and legitimate. Winning the game is what both teams need. You mentioned that. If they beat San Francisco, is it going to relieve the 800-pound gorilla? Because, I mean, you're beating the team that has been a problem for you.
Yeah, I think it makes you feel better. You know, before the season started, we had to do a deal to what's the most, I don't remember how it was worded, important game or pivotal game or whatever. And I picked San Francisco because it was like, this is kind of a prove it game. Have you gotten over basically the hump that they've created for you the last 3 times they played? And last year they got beat by 38 points over there too, by the way. So I looked at this game as saying, okay, this is going to tell you where you're at. Well, who knew that San Francisco was going to be 3-4? If you were probably doing the W and L's for the Cowboys, you might have had them at 4-2. I think the only surprising loss would have been to New Orleans, which that was the last game the Saints won, by the way. So it tells you how bad that loss was. But the way the rest of the season is played out, you probably thought the Cowboys were going to be 3-3, 4-2. I'm guarantee you no one thought they were going to go on the road and beat Pittsburgh. And now seeing what Pittsburgh did, I mean, that's a pretty good win. But you've got to be able to pull through and sustain the injuries they've suffered. And it has really caused them to have problems putting pressure on the quarterback. But, yeah, if they can win, David, and think about this. Going into this stretch after the bye, the 5 teams they had to play. So San Francisco, going to Atlanta, and that's no cakewalk, by the way, Philadelphia, Houston, and then Washington, by the way. So if you combine the record of those 5 teams, they're 21-13. There are 3 of them are either in first place or tied for first place, and the other 2 are in second place. And the only team with a losing record, 49ers. So this stretch is going to determine, I think, where these Cowboys go or where we at least think they're capable of going.
Let me tell you something. If you start messing with the Commanders, you and I are going to fight. We're going to fight. If you look, our quarterback, Garrett, Craig, our quarterback, Jaden Daniels, leave him alone. Don't mess with them.
But don't let him keep running.
I know. I know.
He's not built like Jalen Hurts, okay? He's a little slender. And if you're going to keep running the ball like that, then something bad happens. And so hopefully he can get back. I don't know if it'll be this week or at least soon because he's thrown the ball awfully well. But you got to be careful running the ball. And David, who have they played, by the way?
They're 5-2. I don't care. When you have been as bad as they have been, you just take wins and move on.
Well,
Garrett,
yeah, because
Craig,
they were
right?
playing probably easy teams last year, and they weren't beating them.
So it's part of that last place schedule. Yep. Take it.
It's a step in the right direction, and I think the ownership is definitely a step in the right direction.
No, anything but what they had. All right, Paul.
Mickey, if you're going to have a guy get jury duty on a trial that's going to last at least all week, I mean, before I got into it, as somebody who's never been on a jury, but has been called, I've had jury duty like 4 or 5 times in my life, and you can tell that, like, you might need to buckle up for a week. When I was reading the sentence of what the trial was, I'm like, oh, this one's going to take a couple days. Like, this isn't something that's going to get resolved, in one day. Is it lucky that it's the kicker that does not need to be involved in anything but his own little world out there on near the goalposts?
Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't need a team to practice. He just needs the holder, the deep snapper, and they can certainly do that. I mean, I don't know how long jury duty lasts during the day, if they recess at 5 o'clock or whatever. I mean, he can get back to the star and they can go indoors and do all the kicking he would normally do in practice. But yeah, you know what? I think from my understanding is he got the summons for jury duty and didn't tell anybody. He just assumed, well, I got to go to jury duty, and he figured he'd go on a Tuesday and they wouldn't pick him, because usually they have a pool of 40 people and then they pick 12. And he didn't say anything to anybody because he would have got some guidance, right? Like, you can apply to push it down the line, works in the way, and they basically grant that to you, right? Or maybe you just pulled a, do you know who I am card? I mean, he's young, right? I don't know. The first time I got called for jury duty, I think I was maybe 40. So I kind of knew what was coming and what the options were. But he didn't tell anybody. They've got, Larry Wansley, their director of security. He knows everybody in the DFW area. I'm sure he could have got it postponed. But I heard an interesting story, since he didn't say anything. But I was told before, like when he came as a rookie, they have this meeting and they explained to him what happens with you get a ticket or if you get jury duty summons. Well, he wasn't here, I guess, when they did that, because he was, he signed middle of July before they signed him and brought him to training camp. So, yeah, he thought he was doing his civic duty and reported, and they picked him, of all things.
Yeah, that's
and the one question McCarthy got back or got today was, so what time do you get back from Santa Clara after the game? Because he's going to have to go on Monday, right? Mm-hmm. And the last thing you want to do is show up late.
Yeah. It's the luck of the draw on that jury duty. I was in line the other day. There were hundreds of people around the courthouse, and then all of a sudden, everyone started walking away, and I'm thinking, they had so many people show up on a Monday morning that they didn't need everybody. They said,
right.
Go home, turn in your jury summons so you get credit for it, and go home. That was the happiest moment of not my life, but that was pretty awesome.
So let me tell you a funny story. The first time I got called, and I had to go to Denton County, so I had to go up to Denton, and it was probably no more than 2 months after the Dallas Times-Herald went out of business, right?
Wow.
And so I get called. I go. I got a hat on. I had sunglasses. Like, I just didn't want anybody to know it was me, right? And so we go into this big jury room, 40 of us, and they start doing all the questions, asking questions, And at one point, the assistant DA who was prosecuting the trial asked, so does anybody in here know anybody else? And it's like everybody's kind of just shaking their head. Well, one guy raises his hand and he goes, yeah, everybody knows him. That's Mickey Spagnola. He covers the Cowboys for the Dallas Times-Herald.
Man.
And I'm going, can I just crawl in the ground? Can I just get out of here? Hey. And so the lady said, well, I don't know who he is. So she asked and I told her. And the judge said, is there any reason why you can't serve? And I go, no, absolutely not, because I'm unemployed. The paper went out of business. I don't have a job. I didn't get picked.
Yeah,
I didn't get picked. And after I heard what the thing was and who they started picking, I was pissed off because I wanted to be on that jury.
So last year I was called to jury duty, and it's obviously months before, and I get there like the week of. I'm like, oh, this is a trial for a guy I have known since I've moved to Waco. He was an advertising client of ours at the radio station. He was an attorney. Like, it was a very strange case. But so I get there thinking they're going to let me go like right away.
Yeah.
Because they asked that question. And so they asked the question, and I was like, yeah, I know him. I've had beers with this guy. We've had lunch, business relationship, and all that. That judge made me stay for the rest of the day before he's like, okay, go home. I'm like, how can I be impartial one way or the other? But no, I had to sit there in the room for about 7 hours before they selected the jury.
You had to work for your $10.
Yeah.
Aubrey can get out of bed like Roberto Clemente if he was still alive and he was like 80. He could roll out of bed and hit 300. And Aubrey can do that when it comes to kicking field goals. Mickey, thank you, sir. Enjoy San Francisco. It's a very intriguing game. And both teams are surely limping into the game on Sunday night. Have a great weekend, buddy.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks. Good being with you guys. See
Mickey
ya.
Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com with us. And I mean, this game, oh man, Paul, this is a part of the NFL conspiracy. Debo Samuel,
No.
They put something in his coffee. Then all of a sudden, Ayuk goes down.
I promise you, Debo will be out there.
Purdy was really erratic last week in that
Well, when
game
you have
too.
no receivers and George Kittle went out, so
Kittle's out too.
Well, Kittle was out at the end of the game last week. Like, he had gotten
yeah.
banged up. He's going to play. I believe he's going to play this week. But Ayuk's gone. Jawan Jennings, who filled in for Ayuk and Debo earlier in the year when they were injured, played really well. He's got a shoulder injury. If they're going to get the 49ers, Sunday's the day. But Jordan Mason's been fantastic. They still have one of the best offensive lines. No Tank Lawrence, no Micah Parsons. I just don't see it.
Garrett, will you put up the Texas Sports Hall of Fame image, please? And then we go to Paul and his top 5. Today, they announced the 2025 class of the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. This is the one that is everything combined. High school has theirs, and we mentioned that earlier this week in high school football, but this is everybody, whatever level. Could be high school, could be college, could be pro, could be all of the above. Cedric Benson, the great running back at the University of Texas. Todd Dodge, who's in the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame, now at Lovejoy High School. Brittany Griner, big, tall drink of water, followed her, watched her win a national title, watched her also in a excruciatingly disappointing loss to Louisville her senior year. Too Tall Jones. One of the things you're going to see on a list almost every year, and I'm on the committee that eventually sets up the ballot, and then I vote too, is you're going to see Cowboys, and you're going to see Texas or Texas A&M or all the above. All right? So then you have Biz Mackey. You have Carla Overbeck. And you have Chris Plonsky, who had huge a role in women's sports back in the day when it was even like AIAW. And then you have Richmond Webb, played?
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M. So you have that. There's that influence, selling tickets, selling tables, and that's who was voted in.
By the way, I was surprised that Richmond Webb wasn't in because I've met him several times at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame events. He just comes for the other Aggies.
Yeah.
It's long overdue for him to be in. He was a fantastic college and NFL player. He's an all-pro in the NFL a few times, Pro Bowl, one of the best left tackles ever.
Yep. By the way, Overbeck is from, how did she get in? Carla Overbeck went to North Carolina. I don't know that one. Not sure about. I got the right person? I think I do. Yeah, I do. I don't know. I'm not sure about the role. Maybe I'm missing where she may have played her college ball or where she was born. When we come back, it's time.
She played with the Dallas Sting
There
starting
you
at
go.
11. She grew up in Dallas, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
When we come back, it's Paul Catalina and his top 5. Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store, and as they hit towards the weekend, they have the fall box available. It's $35. It's a chuck roast, whole chicken, carrots, 2 pounds of carrots, 2 pounds of Idaho potatoes, and 2 white onions for you to maybe make something pretty nice when it comes to some kind of something in the oven or stew. The fall box, $70, 5 pounds of stew meat, 5 pounds of chili ground beef, and 5 pounds of regular ground beef. And the fall box 3, which is $110, boneless pork chops, smoky ridge links, whole chicken, stew meat, ground beef, and a chuck roast. All of those for the temperature, although it's not gotten back down to chilly. It was for about 3 to 4 days. Perfect for what you want to cook sometime as the fall weather hits pretty soon. And then the change in the day, the time, right, is just around the corner. It's Waco Custom Marketplace, the Bauer family, also great for tailgating if you haven't gotten everything for this weekend. Homecoming at McLean Stadium, charcoal, pellet fuel, tri-tip, brisket, marinades, seasonings, sausage, and chicken wings. Waco Custom Marketplace on Lake Air Drive in Waco.
For Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome to Paul Catalina's Top 5 here. It's Thursday. We're going to talk the top 5 lethal defenses in the country, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Use our promo code 365sports when you go to Texas Beef House or betonbeef.com. Number 5, Iowa State. Not great against the run, but my gosh, they get it done. UCF kind of had their way on the ground last week, but let's face it, this is an Iowa State team that is absolutely legit on both sides of the ball, but their defense is the heart and soul of their team. It's the heart and soul of every Matt Campbell team, and this Iowa State defense is not playing around. They have pitched a shutout this year, which is very hard to do in modern college football. That was against Houston a couple weeks ago. Number 4, Army. Army does not let you pee a drop. It's ridiculous. They really, really choke you out, and then they hold the ball for most of the game on offense, so there's really nothing you can do. This is a fantastic Army defense. Compare it to Navy. Navy's more of a team that scores a bunch and then is able to control the ball later. Army, yeah, they score a bunch, but also they don't let you play your game at all, and then they grind the clock into dust. So their offense and defense are very complementary, and their defense, one of the best in the country. Number 3, Ohio State. Outside of the Oregon game, they haven't given up many points. Now, yes, they did lose that game on the road, but there's still a defense that has Denzel Burke in the secondary, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuyamolo on the ends, and Tyleik Williams at defensive tackle. They're really good. They're really good against the run. They brought back most of the defense. They are really, really scary, and the offense has so much talent on it that they don't really have to do as much. Oh, I forgot about the best transfer of the entire offseason, Caleb Burns at safety for Ohio State. Not a team that you can tussle with and be confident that you are going to score a lot of points on them. I guess unless you're Dylan Gabriel and you get up for the big games like nobody else. Number 2, Tennessee. This is a shock because Tennessee's defense hasn't really been that great under Josh Heupel. And I would argue that they're winning games more because of their defense than they are because of their offense. Coaches have kind of figured out Nico's strengths and weaknesses right now, so the defense is winning games for them. As a matter of fact, the defense is winning games like the Alabama one last week where the offense turned the ball over so much, but still they kept it in the well and were able to contain Alabama and win that game. That was all on the defense and not on the offense for Tennessee a week ago. And number 1, Texas. Even after the Georgia loss, still the most efficient defense in the country when it comes to passing, rushing, turnovers, everything. Carson Beck threw them 3 picks, and then the offense didn't do anything with it. Pete Kwiatkowski is going to be in people's mouths for head coaching jobs this offseason. Mark my words, and it's because of this defense right here. And I thought Texas fans would enjoy a picture of the great Mark Henry repping the Longhorns here. I know last week wasn't your favorite week, but it wasn't because of the defense. That's for sure. Texas still an unbelievably great defense and rebounded from losing their best linebacker in Jalen Ford and the two best defensive tackles I've seen on any team in college football in about the last decade together. They have not missed a beat. In fact, they are more efficient this year in the SEC than they were in the Big 12 a year ago with how good that defense was. That's how good Pete Kwiatkowski has made the Horns defense, and they are scary going forward no matter what happened last week. That's going to do it for the top 5. We wrap it up right now.
Is Mark Henry's son going to OU?
I think
Why
is Craig in the bathroom? He would.
Well, he's trying to hide from the bugs that we have flying around in the studio. I'm not.
I think they're getting
smart person.
I think they're getting better.
Yeah, no.
A little bit.
Have you not been watching?
I mean, on my side, they're better.
All right. So thank you, Garrett Ross. Thank you, Emery Winter. Thanks to our great sponsors. Again, thanks to Tradesman Services for who they and again, our latest and newest sponsor of 365 Sports. You'll start to hear much more about them tomorrow. Paul's got the show tomorrow. Craig and I have high school football tomorrow night, so we'll be back on Monday. And so for us and from us, enjoy a great weekend of college football if you can. So tonight, 10:30, 365 Sports tonight on the CW. Thank you. Chat room, Twitter at 365 Sports YT, and Sikkim 365 app. David Smoak, good night.